folks, we're back. Week 18's over. The season's over, but we do not give up. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As you can see, I'm at a clinic in the background, so that's why it's there. Jeremy's out in space somewhere. Where are you reporting from, Jeremy? Where in the planetary galaxy are you?
Listen, I don't know, but it just shows the dedication. You're in the clinic. I can't breathe out here, but we're still here in these streets. Week 19 ahead. We're going to recap everything that went on in week 18. Doesn't matter much, but it matters a little. But we'll fill in a little bit of fantasy football and what happened over the course of the year for these teams and things you can expect going into next year. But yeah, hopefully you won your title. You're feeling good. Now we'll take a quick look back at next year and then all off season. We're going to be looking at that as well. So, don't hold your breath until next season starts. I don't know if I have a choice.
Yeah, you're like Superman just out in space. You're like, no worries, I can breathe. It's fine. No big deals, folks. Don't take 2 steps backwards. Just 1 step back, and then we'll take 2 forward. Because if we're gonna go back too far, we're gonna be talking about guys that don't even matter anymore.
True.
Because we don't want to spend 5 hours talking about Michael Carter, even though he did, played a role. But it is what it is. Let's just jump into these games, folks. We're gonna go all the way back to Saturday. To those who remember that far back in time, it feels like a long time ago. Hey, Jamie, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you as always, my friend. So we're jumping in. The first game up was a really uneventful game. It was Baltimore and Cleveland, and that Cleveland offense, I don't really want to spend too much time talking about it. It was abysmal, folks. Bailey Zappi, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, just not much good stuff going on from those guys. Really, it was Baltimore. When they're this good, it's Lamar, it's Henry. Everybody else is kind of second fiddle in that, so it really hurts everyone else in this matchup. The one thing I will point out for Cleveland is Jordan Akins has filled that David Njoku role very, very well since he's been in. I did not think he was going to, but another just ridiculous good game from another top 4 performance. So, I guess in that system, even with bad quarterback play, whoever the tight end is, it looks good. So just keep that in mind for next year if Njoku's hurt or whatever it is. But outside of Henry and Lamar, it's Andrews doing his thing occasionally. Like Bateman got there, had a good game. Flowers kind of out that. It's really not too much about this game. So is there anything you kind of want to dive into with Lamar and Henry, or kind of just leave it and say what it is?
Lamar and Henry were great. Lamar probably should be the MVP in any year that Josh Allen isn't beating the universe. So it's still going to be a really close race between those guys. I think Allen probably ends up winning MVP only because he beat Kansas City and Detroit this year. We'll see how it goes in the playoffs, but that's still to be determined, I think. Things are going to depend on what happens there. But yeah, Lamar was amazing this year. The problem with Lamar being amazing is he didn't need Mark Andrews and Zay Flowers most week because he had Derrick Henry, and he could just run the ball at will whenever and wherever he wanted, and send it over to Rashad Bateman something like 70 times. So absolutely ridiculous season from Lamar. Derrick Henry, no slouch as well. Nothing really to say about those guys. They were great. But I do have a question for you, Jesse. I have a question about these Cleveland Browns. Where do you think they rank in total passing plays in NFL on the season? What rank are they among all teams?
It's got to be, I'm going to say it's top 10. But, I know there's a couple really bad performances mixed in there, so that's why I'm not going to say top 5. I'll say 8th, maybe. I'm not 100% sure on that. Where are they ranking on that?
Yeah, they're first. They're first. More passing plays on the season than the Cincinnati Bengals. Absolutely ridiculous passing volume, and that's kind of why we were able to see Jerry Jeudy pop off. Why, your boy David Njoku, Elijah Moore had a few good games in there. So this passing offense was humming out of necessity because the team was so damn bad, and because Nick Chubb was out for practically the whole season because he was a shell of his former self when he came back. So they really struggled. But really interesting to me that since he was Cleveland was number 1 in total pass attempts on the season in the NFL. You don't want to see that because your team is probably pretty bad and struggling and playing from behind. But still plenty of fantasy goodness there.
Yeah, have you ever heard of the name Jacob Caboti before the Week 18 performance?
No.
He's the 26-year-old who was there. Yeah, he's out of Louisiana. I don't know. He's the guy that was the lead performer for the running backs for the Browns in this game, which just shows you where their running back room is at. Like
3 targets.
Yeah, fantastic performance. The downfall of the offensive line really just hurt the run game as a whole. And, he has Stefanski there. He loves to pass. Like, that's clear as day. So they're going to keep doing that. So, yeah, the offense it was good for fantasy production when we had, James Winston. Outside of that, it's been very up or down. Like, they were trying to make you a DTR. They were trying to do that. Bailey Zappi. I mean, come on. Like, Bailey Zappi. You've seen him first at the Patriots. Not NFL quarterback, right? So,
no.
Yeah, the volume was there. Njoku, Judy, they got theirs. I mean, good performances. Elijah Moore popped off for a little bit, right? Like, he had a couple of peak windows. Came back down to earth. Unfortunately, it is what it is. So, we'll see. It could be a Travis Hunter away. Like, we'll see. Like, maybe that's where they go. But maybe they get Cam Ward. Maybe they get Shedeur Sanders. Who knows where it goes from here? Yeah. But they're getting impact players somewhere on that roster. It's just Deshaun Watson has the Achilles setback, right? So I don't think he's going to be their quarterback next year. So it's it's a good thing. So we got that. So.
I do have a Baltimore question for you, Jesse. So we'll put it in this format for most of the time. If I can come up questions for each team, I will. How many NFL quarterbacks had more touchdown passes than Lamar Jackson this season?
Ooh, I think he led the league in passing touchdowns, didn't he?
He did not. He did not.
How many? We'll say like 3 then, maybe 2.
Yeah. Only one had more. It was Joe Burrow. He had 43, I believe. Lamar had 41, and also Baker Mayfield tied Lamar Jackson with 41 passing touchdowns on the season. This does include Week 18. I know we didn't play in fantasy, most of us, but it does include Week 18. Just to keep in mind, this is by far the most touchdown passes of Lamar Jackson's career. It's the most yardage passing, the most touchdowns, the second fewest interceptions for Lamar, and the third most rushing yards of Lamar Jackson's career. By all accounts, his best career and his best season of his career, and he's won MVP twice. So when we say Lamar Jackson should win MVP, he should, but Josh Allen's just been so damn good, and he's got less to work with around him, I would argue. It's going to be a close race.
Yeah, it's crazy because everybody talks about his rushing ability, right? But he had the 4th highest passer rating of all time in NFL history. Like, this is Lamar Jackson.
So crazy.
He's also throwing it down the field further than like Josh Allen was. Like, he was very deep in ADOT. I think he was like top 7 in ADOT, which just shows you just the level he was playing at with his offense. Which is insane. I would go for Lamar, but like Allen currently is like a negative 350 in the odds. So for whatever reason, even though Lamar won All Pro, like he got the All Pro, the odds shifted even more to Allen's favor. So maybe they're like, hey, we'll give you the MVP because all about Lamar. I get a couple, so it's gonna be interesting to see.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm excited. I don't really care too much who wins the truth. Like, they both deserve. I should be a co-MVP. We can go from there.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. All right, let's jump into our next game. This game is a little bit more interesting. We already talked about him a little bit. It was Joe Burrow and the Bengals defeating the Pittsburgh Steelers 19-17. With Burrow, he threw it 46 more times in this game, like you talked about. They kind of struggled a little bit offensively in this game, even though they had everything on the line. They did end up winning. Unfortunately, Kansas City Chiefs decided to rest everybody, so the Broncos just beat the brakes off of them. They took that playoff slot. So the Bengals don't get in, but they would have been a fun team that got into the playoffs. I know we had the Chase Brown ankle injury, so I don't think he was going to be in the playoffs anyways. We'll see. Khalil Herbert was fine. Jamar Chase, another 20 points, no big deal. T. Higgins kind of let people down, but T. Higgins was awesome this year. I don't want people to have a sour note if they played Higgins this week because he was phenomenal. He was awesome. He did everything you'd ask for. And even like Gesicki was back again. Like Gesicki did some things. So offensively, they were there. On the flip side, this Pittsburgh offense, oh my goodness, like
so bad.
It has come down to earth the last month. We will just say that, where they were cooking. I think they lost like 5 straight games or something like that. Like Russell Wilson was cooking, everything was going well, and then it has shifted where the offense is struggling to do much of anything. And Pickens was back in this game. I don't know if he's at full health or whatever it is, but like he had one of the worst games of NFL wide receiver had. I think he had like 3 drops on the 6 targets. Like he basically benched himself in this game. It was just it was an abomination. They needed him, but hey, that led to Pat Freiermuth doing a thing. So I know I talked about the no upside Pat Freiermuth. Of course, he gets 11 targets in this game, 8 receptions, 85 yards. It leads the way for them. So that's usually how it goes. What's kind of your takeaway from this game between these two teams for Cincinnati and say for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I mean, Arthur Smith should be drawn and quartered. It's really ridiculous how he continues to do this to us in fantasy. No one outside of Pat Fryermuth, who very few were starting in their Week 18 fantasy championships. Um, no one started, and we're happy with any of the production that the Pittsburgh Steelers gave them for fantasy. Russell Wilson was abysmal both in reality and for fantasy. Najee and Jalen Warren couldn't get up to 4 yards a carry, which is not great, but kind of a benchmark for like decent production. They're both in the threes, so not good. But you mentioned Pat Fryermuth, Jesse. Jesse, I got you. I got a Pat Fryermuth question because we're talking about the Steelers.
Oh boy.
Who cares for fantasy?
Oh boy.
Pat Fryermuth question. Where do you think Pat Fryermuth ranks in catch percentage in the NFL among all receiving options? That's tight ends and wide receivers on the season.
Okay. So he's not an A dot guy down the field, so he's gonna have a higher catch percentage than most, right?
Very
and
true.
He's very mediocre, like NFL tight end. Not in a bad way, just not like a good NFL tight end, right? So, I'll say if we're including wide receivers, I don't know, maybe was he like top 20 in catch percentage or something? Maybe
he was top 20. He was number 1, Jesse. He was number 1 in catch percentage. He certainly wasn't a guy who was utilized frequently. He wasn't utilized weekly, right, on a consistent basis. But when he was utilized, he caught the ball, Jesse. And so part of that is Russell Wilson being able to deliver an accurate ball in close. And part of that was Pat Fryermuth just having good hands and not dropping things. Get this guy the ball more because he's going to catch it when you get it to him. You know, we're not talking about a super small sample here for Pat Fryermuth. We're going to talk about George Pickens later because he's a whole nother animal. When we talk about George Pickens, that's really a crazy thing to consider because the talent, all the talent in the world is there. The problem with George Pickens is all the intangibles. Like we saw in this game, he can get in his head. All of those drops really, really killed his production and, of course, the Steelers' chances of winning this game. If we look on the flip side here, we're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals. We've already talked about Joe Burrow passing for the most touchdowns in the league with 43. Jamar Chase, another 14 targets. He was your wide receiver 1 on the fantasy season. Let me just get these stats for you. 127 receptions. 1,708 total receiving yards, 17 receiving touchdowns on 175 targets. Jamar Chase is him. He's always been him, but because he's got a healthy Joe Burrow, he was healthy. I mean, it's absolutely crazy what he was able to do, and he is far and away the wide receiver 1 in Dynasty, in redraft next year. There's no one that's going to touch him. Oh, and guess what? T. Higgins is probably out of town. So we're just going to continue to funnel more targets to Jamar Chase because the only person that's replacing T. Higgins is probably a rookie or someone not as good as T. Higgins. Jamar Chase, welcome to 200 targets next season.
Yeah. With Jamar Chase, the whole thing is like he was better with T. Higgins on the field, which is crazy to talk about. Like T. Higgins opened up the offense. He was able to just go nuclear multiple times. Those games where he went just like mass form where he's like 50 fantasy points and all that stuff. That was with T. Higgins. Because T. Higgins, no surprise, he opens up the offense. Now they drafted Jermaine Burton. And my goodness, you want to talk about a head case? He is worse than George Pickens. Like he's the worst version than George Pickens. Not as talented of a player either. And he's just they tried to feature him. He's like, guess what? I'm gonna go play at the casino. We'll do these things. You guys worry about that later. So the talk of potentially T. Higgins being replaced by Jermaine Burton in 2025, that's not happening, folks. So I don't know. I get the feeling like either way, or however you want to slice it, it's good news for Chase. He either gets more targets or he's more efficient. As Joe Burrow, you can't really go wrong. The floor is incredibly high. The ceiling we just saw, he put up 300, almost 400 fantasy points on the season. Or no, he put up 400 PPR. That's right, he did. And to Jamie's point on Pickens, yes, he needed like 100, I think, 99.
Yeah,
he gave you basically nothing in this game. So yeah, he could have got 1,000 yards. It would have been the second straight game with it. It was one of the worst performances you see. That's like on a island game where everyone gets to see it. So it is just the polar opposite of the Jamar Chase was the George Pickens. And it's unfortunate in his situation. I think in a good situation, Pickens could be a very good NFL wide receiver. Like depending on his price, I'll buy him Dynasty or not. But yeah, it's just he's very much on that Jermaine Burton track. We don't like to see that.
Yep. And the last thing I'll say about Pickens is this is an Arthur Smith offense. I mentioned it at the top when we started this game. We saw how Arthur Smith nuked the value of all of those Atlanta playmakers last year. Kyle Pitts, I think, was doing it to himself. We realize that now. But Drake London is phenomenal, had a great season this year. now that Smith is jettisoned, Bijan had a great season. And now you're seeing, Bijan's workload from last year and everything that Tyler Algier sapped. We see the Bijan, but now split into two players in Jalen Warren and Najee, so it's even worse. And George Pickens, of course, he's the only game in town, but certainly he's just not able to do it in an Arthur Smith offense. I don't blame Russ completely. I blame Arthur Smith more.
Yeah, he did a good job early in the season with Fields, kind of like restricting what he could do, where he was limiting the plays. As the season progressed until Russ took over, like Fields kind of extended plays a little bit more and played outside of that structure, and it led to more variance with him playing. And you saw a couple against, I think it was against the Cowboys, he had that big comeback or whatever it was. But yeah, like with Arthur Smith, there's just limitations on this offense. Like he was on pace to get more targets in this game. He's only played 14 games, 2024. 103 targets. He played 17 last year. They only had 106 targets, right? So he was going to well project past that if he played the full season. But it's just, just one of those things. I mean, what could he be? Maybe a top 20 wide receiver when this offensive all comes together? Maybe. But like it's really hard for someone in his position to be the Jamar Chase or even close to that, right? Just because the offense doesn't throw enough. So it's really difficult. We saw this with Drake London for multiple years. Like in Arthur Smith, the same stuff, right? These guys, they're limited from fantasy production and such.
Yuck.
So, yeah, hopefully they move on from him. We'll see. But Mike Tomlin, the offense they love to play. Ideally, they just move on from this running back situation. They push it up tempo. They do some things. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's what we want to happen. But, they need a quarterback. So, yeah, it's just going to be another, I hate to say it for Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it's going to be another season of good defense, suspect offense. There'll be some highs. There'll be some lows. It's just going to repeat itself until Mike Tomlin probably goes on his way. So, unfortunately, it's what it is. All right, let's go to our next game. Talk about that one. That one's a little bit more fun. There was a lot more offense in this game. And by a lot more, I mean there was a hell of a lot of offense. Carolina winning this game in overtime, 44-38. Bryce Young, man, we've been talking about Bryce Young a lot. He's found it, folks. Like, if I know in one of our Discords, Joe Leary was talking about a trade he made, just this abysmal trade he made where he got basically Bryce Young for peanuts, and it looks fantastic. The price when he was benched, if he took advantage, it looks excellent right now, right? Because you have a guy under contract for 3 more years, I think. If they're going to take the 5th year. So 3 more years in Carolina. He's showing the upside that people don't think is possible. He had 36 fantasy points in this game. Really just coming on strong. And I know Atlanta's a really bad defense, which is why we talked about potentially streaming him. But they play them twice a year. They play Tampa twice a year. Like this division is really bad defensively. So like Bryce Young could take advantage of that for 6 games. If he takes a step forward, man, you have something good. So the takeaway for me is clearly this. It's Bryce Young. Like the guy is he gave Miles Sanders 25 fantasy points in this game. Miles Sanders, that guy that's been a ghost the last 3 years. Yeah, he did it. Jalen Coker was our best player. So yeah, I'm excited for Bryce Young. What do you look at this Carolina Panthers team moving forward into 2025? What's your expectation? Do you think they can get any better and improve, take a step forward? Or it's going to be more kind of like up and down what we saw this year, even though Canales, I guess, helped right the ship with the quarterback?
He did. And Jalen Coker, we saw, he stepped up and really looked good, absent the good lookingness of Xavier Legette, because that was the expectation there. Trading up and taking him so high, trying to get that extra year in on the contract. I mean, that just looks horrible for Carolina at this point, just going after that, 3rd receiver in 4 years with that archetype. Mingo and I don't even remember the other guy's name. Terrace Marshall.
Marshall.
So Xavier Legette here just woof. But Bryce Young is him. He's figured it out, and the confidence is just pouring out of this man, which is beautiful to see. I've got an interesting little tidbit here, Jesse. Since 2016, 7 quarterbacks have been taken at the 101. Here are those names in the NFL draft at the 101. Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, Bryce Young, and Caleb Williams. I really think, bet on quarterbacks that are taken first overall. They're probably not going to bust for you for fantasy, right? Like, we're a little worried about Trevor. We don't know about Caleb. There's a little bit of concern about Kyler as well. But these guys retain their value for a number of reasons, if not for the biggest reason, because the team invested a crap ton of draft capital in them. We all know the story of what was traded to Chicago for Bryce Young. It's like DJ Moore and like 7 first-round picks or something stupid. But
Yeah.
if he can be this guy going forward with the full offseason and the confidence of the team, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, like it looks good. And yeah, to your point, the wide receiver that they hit on that is probably the biggest like ascension is Jalen Coker. He basically has many like yards as Xavier Legette. Only played 11 games. If you want to go, like I put out a tweet where it was like yards per game. He basically outscored every guy that was taking the top 100 wide receivers except like 4, the really good NFL wide receivers. Like he outscored Roma Dunde on yards per game. Like all of these high profile wide receivers. Jalen Coker makes it look like they found a piece that they can build around. He's a big slot type player, right? So you have him. I don't know. Thielen just doesn't want to die. Like we keep projecting the death of Adam Thielen, and he's like, I got one more in me. It's that Vince Carter meme you see with him, right? Like that's Adam Thielen. He continues to do it. Yeah. So they have him under contract, I think, for one more year. They have Thielen in it. Hopefully they can bring in another piece that really takes it over the top. But in the meantime, like you saw the no-look throw where he turned around after he threw it, raises his hands up like the Steph Curry thing, right? Like when you have that level of confidence going, you know you have something good. So hopefully they build on it with Canales since the next year, take a step forward. And yeah, like he's still not valued like really expensive. I think he's in that like QB 16, QB 18 range. So he's if you believe it, that was not a bad time to play. Speaking of quarterbacks, go ahead.
Well, quick question for you because I didn't ask you the question yet. Chuba Hubbard, fantasy points per game. Where did he rank this season?
He's like RB
amongst running backs.
Yeah, like RB9 or something. Is that range?
Close. RB13. I think it probably was influenced in the last week or two. We know Chuba went out and then on IR ridiculously. Right before your fantasy championship is the most ridiculous beat I've ever seen in all the years I've been playing fantasy. Put him on IR unexpectedly, like 3 days before your fantasy championship. But yeah, RB13 on the season in fantasy points per game. Chuba was an absolute league winner until he bowed out before you had a chance to win your league.
Yeah, he got you there, right? Like if you picked up Chuba, or like we talk about waiver wire pickups, he'll be mentioned among those guys. A lot of people drafted him, but like when he took over in week 3, he basically only had 1 week underneath double-digit fantasy points. So like
awesome. That
shows you how valuable and like high his floor was until we get to the late part of the window where like the fantasy playoffs hit. It kind of was really up or down, but they tried to do the Jonathan Brooks thing. Of course, he dealt with a serious injury. The nice thing for Chuba Hubbard is he won't need surgery at least. So we'll see what happens with his calf and his knee if it's long term. But like, it looks like he's good. And yeah, like, I mean, Jamie, congrats on you for finding this. Like, I meant to pull this up earlier, but yeah, like the fact you got him on Superflex League basically for Fab, it's like, why the heck not, right? So like, yes, it's worked out well. Speaking of quarterbacks, let's talk about Michael Penix and his kind of ascension. Obviously, they played a very bad defense to the Carolina Panthers, but hey, Penix did his thing, right? And I want to talk about Drake London and how much he's hyper-targeted Drake London with Michael Penix as a starter, right? In the 3 games Penix started, like it was ridiculous for Drake London. He had 8, 13, and 18 targets. Like it's just like he's like, hey. And of course, the last game, Darnell Mooney was out. He did not play in the last week 18 game. But still, the fact he put up 10 receptions, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns, like that's premium stuff. So we're getting that ceiling from Drake London. He's locking himself in as a top 10 dynasty asset, like dynasty or wide receiver, right? So at least they have that. They have him. They have Bijan. Penix has the pieces in place, right? So another year in the system with a preferred growth. Like I think Penix is the guy that you should probably buy now. His stock's going to rise, particularly because this quarterback class just is not good. There's maybe 2 potential first-round quarterbacks. Like if that, we still don't even know how it's going to go. So yeah, I like what I saw out of Penix. When you are looking at this offense, how do you feel about Penix and Bijan and London and all these guys beginning 2025?
I really like it because they're in a position now with all this youth to not worry about a contract. I'm not sure where Drake London is if he's got 1 or 2 years left. But that's the first contract they're going to have to worry about because I don't think you're going to be paying Kyle Pitts because you don't got to. but certainly, you got Drake, you got Bijan, you got Penix for the foreseeable future. 1, maybe 2. You're probably potentially going to franchise tag. I don't know with wide receiver contracts these days, but you could potentially franchise Drake London. And then, keep these guys together for a few years as Penix develops. that's beside the point. The point I want to make here is Michael Penix looked really good, even with behind that terrible offensive line. So that's the concern. The nice thing is, and the whole reason I was bringing up those contracts and these youth is because now we got Darnell Mooney, we got Drake London, we got Bijan Robinson, we still have Kyle Pitts. Fine, we'll roll him out there another year. We can fortify this offensive line. We can spend up a little bit on defense. Both of those things will significantly take the pressure off of Michael Penix to do it all. And when he doesn't have to do it all, he's going to be more comfortable. If this team needs to invest in the offensive and defensive line, it's the biggest thing that they need. They need a pass rush, and they need to protect Penix from the rush.
100%. Like, and to your point with Kyle Pitts, they already, I don't know why they did it before the season, but they accepted the club option, which I think it's about $10 million that they're paying Kyle Pitts. So they're paying him. They're paying Mooney a good amount of money. They have Mooney for 2 more years. They got London for next year, and then they're going to do the club option, which, because, he's top 10 pick. So they'll pay him top 10 money-ish position 2026. So, like, it's all insulated. It's all there. Bijan's going to be there a while too, right? So they have all these young stars to build with, and they take a step forward. They can do what they almost did and almost win the division this year. I think they have a good shot next year because the youth is on its way ascending. Tampa Bay, like, Baker is incredible. We'll get to him a little bit, but it's a little bit older of a roster, so it's a little bit more shaky, right? You can still at least project it forward with the offense. It's just it looks like a lot of fun next year. So they'll be rocking and rolling. They fix that defense like you're talking about, the offensive line. Like, they could be a team that we look at next year and they have 11, 12 wins potentially. So it's exciting, man.
100%. Real quick question. Let's not spend a lot of time on it because I know we're running long already.
Mm-hmm.
Tyler Algier, how many yards from scrimmage this season?
Not a lot. He is like fine. Probably like 600, 700, somewhere in that range would be my guess.
Over 700 yards. Looks like 730 yards from scrimmage for Bijan or for Tyler Algier. He's good. If he ends up on another squad, I mean, I was just thinking this earlier when we were talking about Pittsburgh. Arthur Smith could bring his boy Tyler Algier over there, and he could be the starting running back, and he'd probably be, just as good as Najee Harris. So Tyler Algier, only 24 years old. I think this guy for Dynasty is a nice little stash as well.
Yeah, because he's got the one more year. Like, he's dirt cheap because he was like a day 3 pick, like a round 3 or round 4 pick. So he's on that last year of his like rookie contract. So he's basically cost $1 million. He's not going anywhere this year. But in 2026, your point, like, yeah, dude, he will go somewhere. Someone will pay him at least decent money because he's that good of a player, right? He's not Bijan Robinson. Newsflash, no one else is Bijan Robinson. That guy is a truly elite player. But Tyler Algier, he's a grinder. But dude, the guy punish you. I think he's just a better version of Najee Harris. Like to your point on those type of players, right? So yeah, I'm excited to see where he goes. In his role, he's a solid handcuff. And if Bijan goes down, you have yourself a guy that's going to be like a high-end RB2 for you. So it's all upside in that offense. I like. He had what did he have? He didn't really have that many. Yeah, he had about 150 touches this season. Probably the same thing next year. It'll be solid for him. All right, let's go to our next game. Sorry, I'm all over the place on the schedule. Washington and Dallas. This game was not super exciting. I will say that. No. It was fine. Marcus Mariota put up a whopping 26 fantasy points because guess what? The dude runs. He had 5 rushes, 56 already had a rushing touchdown. That's Mariota. Obviously, he's just not the dynamic freak that Jane Daniels is, right? Daniels played a little bit in this game. He basically played like a handful of snaps. They pulled him out. He had a drive, and he was sore, so they just rested him. We got to see the Trey Lance thing on offense, and it's really like a dick move by Jerry Jones because he didn't want to pay Cooper Rush's bonus, right, for getting the snap. So he's like, let's throw Trey Lance out there. And then he tried to say he didn't know that was actually a thing that the bonus was on the line. And I was like, come on, man. Right. Just admit it. Like, everybody knows what you're talking about. But there wasn't a lot in this game. I know we talked about it with Rico Dowdle going into the playoffs. He looked like a good guy. He finally had a good game where he had 25 touches overall, was good. Yeah. The rest of the guy, this Dallas offense without CeeDee Lamb, it's just so frustrating to try to watch what these guys do because it's a lot of guys no one really cares about. Didn't do much of anything. I mean, Jalen Tolbert, he's been a thing that people have talked about. Jonathan Mingo, another Panthers cast off, just not much of anything. So don't want to spend too much time on that offense. So it was basically Trey Lance doing his thing. I think he had 6 rushing attempts? It's fine, it's whatever. They only put up 19 points. They tried their best. The weird thing is Washington came back and they did win this game because they saw Green Bay was potentially beating Chicago, and they're like, "Oh, we got to get the 6th seed, right?" So it was fun. More fireworks than this game actually was. But to your point on the Washington side, Terry McLaurin does it once again. Terry McLaurin finishes the wide receiver 6 freaking fantastic year from Terry McLaurin. If you got him, congrats to you. I was very wrong about Terry McLaurin at the beginning of the year. I'm sure Jeremy remembers. I was like, that's a bad pick in the round 7. Don't do it. Oh boy, regret that one. Yeah, he had 13 touchdowns. Like, if you have 13 touchdowns, he's basically Mike Evans. He had 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, like 80 receptions. That's a Mike Evans line. That's what Terry McLaurin did.
Yep.
So he was fantastic. And Zach Ertz, revival of the old man Ertz, once again, does it, 44 yards, 5 receptions. But for this offense with Jaden Daniels, I guess what do they need to do to take the next step forward to join the elite of the elite offenses? Because in the second half of the year is a little bit more up and down than the first half of the year. Do you think there's something they could do going into next year that would take them over the edge where they're like top 3 offense?
Yeah, go get T. Higgins. That's what this offense really needs to do. They need to just, burn the boats. There's no going back, and go ahead and offer T. Higgins the most money that you can possibly offer him, outside of like the top 4 to 5 highest paid wide receivers. I don't care. You just need somebody like that. We talked a little bit about Chris Godwin. I mean, that's another interesting option. I think he probably pairs well too with Terry McLaurin and can play opposite Zach Ertz as well, kind of in the slot. That would be really interesting for them. But one of these 2 players needs to be in Washington next season, because you need to let Jaden Daniels develop and take the next step. If you have another piece that can, stretch the defense, I think that opens things up for Brian Robinson. You can then attack offensive line and defensive line, another thing that this team needs, just like Atlanta in the draft. And then this offense can really hum. You get a running back in those middle rounds, 3, 4, to replace, Eckler or eventually supplant Brian Robinson. I think this offense, focusing on the offense is the way to go. But with Dan Quinn in the building, who knows? Maybe it's just defense 7 straight rounds,
Yeah, I mean, I would understand it, right? Because the defense was very much the worst part of the team. Now they have top 3, top 4 most like cap space in the NFL because they had all those veterans on 1-year deals. So it's going to be completely different from how it looks this year. Hopefully they can insulate it more with a few more rookies. They do it with the depth, kind of do what they did. Jaden Daniels takes a step forward. And this is how you have a potential Super Bowl contender in Washington. I know it sounds crazy to talk like that, but I think it's within the range of outcomes if they roll the dice right. They hit, roll 7. So it's going to be exciting. I'm excited to see what Jaden Daniels can do in the playoffs if he can still take a step forward with it. Really just lesser cast of talent around him, right? Like it's Terry McLaurin, but it's just not much else going on there. And to your point on the running back room, yeah, draft somebody good. Get an impact running back. It's going to make a world of difference for you. You don't have to do the Brian Robinson, Nelson Eckler thing. You can just skip past that, get a high impact guy, and you go from there. So, yeah, I would be excited to see that if they do that. We talked about
question for you on Jaden Daniels. How many touchdowns did he throw in the fantasy playoffs? That's weeks 15, 16, and 17.
Ooh, good question. I have no idea. I'm going to say maybe – well, he had that one really big game, right? So maybe somewhere like 7 or 8 maybe?
10. 10 touchdowns, 2, 5, and 3 against 5 against Philly. So 2, 5, and 3 from Jaden Daniels absolutely was a league winner for you all season long. But over the last 5 weeks, QB 1, 2, and then in those fantasy playoffs, 7, 1, and 4 on the week. Monster.
Yeah, he is what he is. He was the top 6 quarterback.
I think it was number 4. Yep, number 4 on the season for Jaden Daniels.
And sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, so he's awesome. He's what he is. Let's go to our next game. Talk about the Bears and the Packers. Talk about that game. This game was ugly for the Packers standpoint. Like Malik Willis, Jordan Love. Jordan Love gets hurt, right? And he's limited going in, hurt his elbow, so we don't know how he's going to go. We will see going in from there. How this messes with them in the playoffs. If they have to do Malik Willis in the playoffs, like, good luck, Packers. Your season's probably over. Just hate to break it to you. Even though LaFleur did some magic earlier in the year with Willis, I just think that the ceiling's really capped, and that's what they're going to need in the playoffs against these really good teams. But for the Bears, with Caleb Williams, how do you feel about him with this offense they have in structure? With their good new coaching staff and doing everything with them, do you think they can resurrect it to where Caleb Williams takes that step forward we hoped and we saw from Jaden Daniels this year? Or do you think that's maybe a little bit long-term away until Caleb Daniels proves that he's that guy?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit long-term. I think he needs to prove it. I don't know what else he could have done this season to prove that he was worthy of the number 1 pick. I think he did that. There's a few game management issues. There's like mechanics issues. There's reading the field issues. But those issues are not insurmountable, right? In a better ecosystem, really what I mean by that is coaching. Caleb Williams can progress and become this Prince who was promised quarterback. It sucks that he wasn't Jaden Daniels in year one. That's kind of what we were all hoping for and expecting. But there's promise there. Roma Dunze looked really good over the second half. DJ Moore, I think almost had 1,000 yards receiving and actually had a much better season than I remember. Keenan Allen was catching all those touchdowns. DeAndre Swift was good. So, when Shane Waldron was booted, or not even booted, just thrown DJ Jazzy Jeff style out the front door of the building. This offense showed you and Caleb Williams showed you what they could do, but there's no leadership to help them figure out what to do. So they were kind of just running around playing backyard ball. So it'll be nice to see with a full off season with hopefully a confident offensive coordinator what this Bears team can do. But yeah, they really need to help Caleb Williams on the sack front because that's been his biggest issue in year one. Offensive line for sure, but then he needs to be coached up, get the ball out of your hands quicker.
Yeah, 100%. Just invest, like you talked about, teams investing in all defense with Dan Quinn, Washington Commanders. Mm-hmm. Bears, just invest entirely on the offensive line. Please make that happen. Give Caleb Williams a chance because he's getting in his own head and making it worse. Like he's prolonging plays, trying to be Superman. It's not working out for him, and that's why you're seeing these sack numbers and these pressure rates and all that fun stuff. Yep. But a good quarterback coach, good offense coordinator, he'll figure that out and then move on from there. For the Packers, there's not really too much. It was a little bit disappointing from this wide receiver room. We had Jaden Reed. The rest of the guys were just kind of all over the place. I think to your point, what we saw in the second half of the year, Romeo Doubs was their best wide receiver, the guy they trusted the most. I still don't think they have a high-end target on this offense. So they just have a lot of quality pieces. Until that happens, I don't know. It feels like it's just going to be Josh Jacobs and Jordan Love running back next year, the guys that you want to invest in. But if you had to invest in one of the pieces for the Packers wide receiver room, is there anybody you want to, or are you just going to kind of stay away?
No, I think I need to stay away. I mean, Romeo Doubs has been the guy who's garnered the most attention, it seems, from Jordan Love when everybody is on the field. That said, no. It's nice because it'll be a little bit condensed. I mean, it's not nice that Christian Watson got injured, and he's probably not going to be ready for the beginning of next season. But it's nice from the standpoint of we'll probably have a condensed target share now with one less player. But Dontavian Wicks has shown that he's able to earn targets. Can he catch them? I don't know. And Bo Melton is no slouch, right? They've got other pieces there. Malik, whatever his name is, the other guy, I can't remember. Heath is there as well, and he's a decent wide. He's decent. So no, but Josh Jacobs really kind of nukes the value of this entire passing game for me. I mean, Tucker Kraft has been inconsistent as a result. So the short answer is no. I don't want to invest in that. The long answer is what just came out of my mouth. But yeah, pretty awful stuff. Jordan Love, QB what in fantasy points per game?
Oh, it wasn't CJ Stroud bad, but it wasn't great. He was borderline top 20 quarterback. He was not what we hoped he would be. And I think to your point, the Josh Jacobs stuff really took all of the touchdowns of the offense. Jacobs had something like 16 total touchdowns. He was the RB5. So yeah, there's a few offenses we saw run through running backs, limit the quarterbacks. Both CJ Stroud, both Jordan Love, they suffered because the running backs took all the touchdowns. And Love and Stroud, they're not mobile quarterbacks, right? So those guys get hit at worse, higher rate. So just
give me a number.
QB what? QB 20.
QB 20. Fantasy points per game. QB 20. Better than Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bryce Young, and the aforementioned CJ Stroud. Any guess on CJ Stroud? QB what fantasy points per game?
I think he's 31. It's real
33. Bad. Yeah, it's real bad. CJ Stroud, QB 18 on the season. Total fantasy points, QB 33 fantasy points per game. Please use fantasy points per game and not overall finish when you look at these players when you're drafting them next year.
Yeah, it gives you a much better understanding of how many games they played and in those games they played, right? Instead of this. Yeah. This is how we got the Ezekiel Elliott, who was RB7 one year, but he was RB21 that year on a points per game basis. It shows you just how different it is, right? It is. So yes, I'm with Jeremy, 100% use points per game. Enough of talking about these kind of just offenses that were a little disappointing this year. We're gonna go to offenses that are unfortunately they're still off. They were still just
it's even worse actually.
Yeah, I tried to talk it up and I was like, I can't even do it with a straight face. The Trevor Lawrence, Anthony Richardson situations did not work out well for both these teams. I guess we start out with Jacksonville. Brian Thomas is the shot. Brian Thomas might have saved freaking the GM's job because of how good he was.
Oh yeah.
Outside of that, man, we had the Gabe Davis. We just had Travis Etienne take a massive fall off a cliff. Bigsby basically took his job at points of the year. Like this wide receiver room without Christian Kirk looked pretty abysmal outside of that. We have Evan Ingram suffering an injury. The offensive line wasn't good. So, yeah, it was a bad year. And Lawrence was not good. He tried to do a lot. He loved Brian Thomas Jr., so that was great. But for him, he's in that CJ Stroud range. I think he's like a top 30-ish quarterback for fantasy points for LA. It's not good, man. Yeah. We talked about this numerous Discords and messaging rooms and all of this stuff. Yeah. Both of these guys did not live up to where they were drafted at this year. CJ Stroud was well above Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence was like round 4-ish in like dynasty startups. Did not live up to that at all either way. Like you could have gone Drake May, at least you have the insulation, but whatever it is. I think with Lawrence, it gets interesting, right? I think there's actually a path to like buying Lawrence. It's just I wonder what the actual upside is with Trevor Lawrence. If he can give you a top 5 finish. Do you think that's possible for him to get there? And if you do think it's possible, how is he going to get there? Like, how do you think that's going to happen?
Top 5, no chance. No. It's going to take multiple years. He is a really, really interesting buy for me because I agree with you. I think the price is going to be cheap and he's got the weapons here. The problem is, the running game does not look good. We do not know who's going to come in to replace Doug Peterson. The offensive line has not been good. There's so many holes on this team, and we'll say this about a few teams today when we talk. There's so many holes. Which ones do you fill? I don't know. It's going to be multiple years. Oh, and Trent Baalke is still in charge of filling those holes as GM. He did not get fired. So it's going to be ugly for a while. And, I think Trevor Lawrence is capable. Problem is, we haven't seen it be. This organization is in trouble.
Yeah, it seems a little dysfunctional. And why am I looking on the general manager's name? It's
Khan.
Yeah. No, the general manager.
Khan. Trent Baalke.
Yeah, so like they did that weird interview where Baalke was in the room and Khan was like, "Yeah, if someone can give me a legit reason why we should fire the GM," and I was like, "Bro, just fire him. Just get rid of him."
Yeah, come on now.
He took over interim GM jobs at 2 different spots. Has held on to the jobs past that coach. He beat out Harbaugh in San Francisco. I don't know what this guy has with the black market on people, but he's got serious information. I don't know what's going on, but we'll see how it happens. I know Ben Johnson's interviewing down there. If they get him, I would be shocked. Like if he goes there because the situation is just a disaster. We'll see. But it's not too much exciting going on in the Jacksonville Jaguars situation. We'll see who they add to the room. Ideally, they're probably that offensive line. I think they should add a running back to your point because ETN does not look like himself at all. Bigsby's totally replaceable, so that it's a much worse version of the Jaguar or the Lions running back room. Give them somebody that has juice, and like even though they have ETN in their contract, bring somebody in, make it fun, make it exciting. So hopefully they can do that. Let's talk about the Colts.
Question about BTJ. Yards per route run, that's the fantasy metric we love. Where did he finish overall among all pass catchers this season?
Top 8. He's probably higher than that. I know he's really high, but I'm saying I'll say he's wide receiver 5.
No. He was wide receiver 11. There are some surprising names ahead of him, which we'll get into a little bit later, but still, 11th in the league. This includes tight ends as well. So 11th because there's a tight end on the list ahead of him. But there are, only 10 other players in the NFL with a better yards per route run. BTJ by every single metric was phenomenal this year. You can't buy him now, but draft him and redraft next year.
Yes. We're talking about with SC on like the show we did. We were talking about top 5 like picks. I don't think he's going to go that high, but he's probably going to be a borderline round 1 pick, round 2, somewhere in that range, just because he's that good and everybody's going to expect him to take another step forward. I don't know how much better he can get, though. Like he was everything.
Yeah, sure.
It's basically like Lee Neighbors and then him wherever you want to take those guys. Totally fine. Let's talk about the Colts and just the dysfunction that is the Colts offense and everything with Anthony Richardson. he said he would welcome some competition. Do you think the Colts are going to bring in some competition for him at all? Or is it just you're running back with Anthony Richardson to see if they can hit and make it look work in this third year with him?
I've been begging an NFL team to run 2 quarterbacks in the backfield for years. Since Tim Tebow. I really think that guy was drafted too high, but he's a winner, right? Like he knew what to do, even won that inexplicably, I think it was actually Cortland Sutton. No, who caught the ball? Oh, Demaryius Thomas. Making that big play and winning. I think they beat the Steelers in that playoff game. But the point is like if you have a big body guy in the backfield who can take the hits and run, which Anthony Richardson hasn't proven he can do in the NFL yet. But if they can run it, but they also have the element to throw, I mean, you can theoretically build an explosive, dynamic offense. Now, should Anthony Richardson welcome in competition? No, because he couldn't beat out 40-million-year-old Joe Flacco this season. So, I'm worried about his value. I don't think you can sell him at the moment if you're holding bags like I am, but you certainly shouldn't go out and buy him. He is a hold and pray that they do not draft a quarterback early this season.
Yeah, I think if you buy him, it's not going to take it first. Like I don't think anyone's really demanding it first at this point in time. So it all depends on, I guess, the price and what it is. If you can get him, like I'm just a sucker for these mobile quarterbacks. So I'll probably end up buying him in a couple of places, and man, I might regret it. Like theoretically, I probably will regret it, but it just is what it is. I know myself. I'm always like, ooh, tantalizing upset. Come here, baby.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how it goes with the rest of the offense. Like people were so frustrated that Alec Pierce was their wide receiver 1. Obviously, this had to do with the Pittman injury. Like Downs was solid, but just overall the offense was just even Taylor was a massive disappointment. Nobody really did much of anything offensively. So we didn't get the AD Mitchell. Like he was basically just a nothing burger. Like I think he had like 300 yards of offense and stuff. Yeah. Is there any wide receiver in this room, if Anthony Richardson is a starting quarterback next year, that you are willing to invest in? Because they were very up or down, but like there were a couple of games for Down, a couple of games for Pittman, and even Pierce. Like, is there anybody worth drafting? You think you redraft next year on the Colts, or you just kind of want to skip the wide receiver?
Not with Richardson. No. You got Jonathan Taylor. I would make the bet on Richardson, but otherwise, no. Michael Pittman, we know he was playing with a fractured back. Josh Downs was up and down in terms of the target volume, which evaporated the second half of the season, made no sense, and then came back sporadically. And Alec Pierce, you mentioned, Jesse. Where's Alec Pierce on the ADOT list in the NFL average depth of target for all pass catchers with more than 50 targets? Where do you think Alec Pierce falls?
Oh, he's well up there. I don't know if he's like league leader status, but he's very, very high. His yards per target were absurd. Of the top 30, I'll say he's like top 15 wide receiver in that category.
Yeah, he's number 1. He is number 1 in ADOT of receivers with more than 50 targets. So there are guys out there running more routes, but he's catching them. And to be fair, Anthony Richardson is the one thing he really did well this season was get the ball up and out to Alec Pierce, who was coming down with everything. Ridiculous, like shades of, I don't even know, early career or mid-career Tyler Lockett out there, just coming down with everything that was lofted up to him. Ridiculous. So Alec Pierce was awesome this season. He's like a dynasty stash. Like maybe he develops and can become this, I don't want to say Jameson Williams because they use him differently, but like the way a Deshaun Jackson was used. I don't think he'll ever be as productive, but the way he was used deep downfield, he's always opened up.
Yeah, this is the type of guy I want on my best ball teams because when he booms, it's the boom, right? The best ball, the great thing about it, you don't have to worry about the floor because the floor is like basically 0 with him. He had over a 50% catch rate, which is crazy considering Anthony Richardson was his quarterback. Over 50% of his catches, like he caught them. So he's making magic happen back there. I know we wanted to replace him with AD Mitchell. Turns out he's just like, no, I'm a quality NFL wide receiver. So they have that deep threat. Hopefully they could build with Pittman. They could build with Downs. Go from there. Yeah, Kevin Walter, the slot guy, the short slot white guy.
Yeah,
Who was the Seahawks guy?
A little different.
We played flag football against Kevin Walter.
Yikes!
We beat them. It's actually pretty funny. So, but it was there's another. I think it was who's the old Russell QB coach. I can't remember his name. It'll come to me because he's local in the area. Give me 5 minutes, I'll get there. Yeah, it's just my cousin will run all these crazy plays and stuff. It's just hilarious. But yeah. Anyways,
well, Jesse, I know you didn't mean to do this because you probably meant to do this, but we did skip the Houston Tennessee game, and we do have to talk about that game. So we should probably run it back to Houston, Tennessee.
Yeah, I just glazed right past it. I was like, I don't want to talk about this stuff.
You're like, oh, screw this.
Yeah, so we had some Davis Mills vibes, Mr. Giraffe Neck himself. That guy has the longest neck in NFL history. It's like
he almost broke it off.
It's like a sling. Yeah, he's scorpioned. He did the scorpion. It was brutal. But his neck's so long, it was strong enough to keep it. But yeah, we got Dameon Pierce in this game for Houston. Let's talk about them. I don't know where this came from, but Dameon Pierce had 19 for 176. Okay. Sure. Yeah, we were hoping for Joe Mixon, but obviously in this game, season's over for a lot of people. He had 5 carries. They were like, all right, Joe Mixon, go sit the bench. We're going to let Dameon Pierce cook. For, I guess, with the other ancillary pieces in Houston, not considering Nico Collins, who was the one consistent wide receiver they have. He got over 1,000 yards, only played 12 games. He was really good. Tank Dell, who knows when he comes back, right? They have Deontay Johnson under contract. Maybe they sign him long-term and they have pieces in there. What do you think they're going to do? Like, how do we fix the situation for CJ Stroud to get back to what he was as a rookie? Because he fell off a cliff this year. Like, where do we go to kind of resurrect CJ Stroud to get him back to what he wanted to be?
Yeah, I was assuming all along the situation was an offensive line. But that really wasn't the case. If you look at the metrics, middle of the road in terms of pressure. And then you think about, well, maybe it's a weapons issue. Certainly, Stephon Diggs went down early, Tank Dell went down there, but those guys were pretty good in spurts. So, I don't know what the hell is the issue here. Really, the concern is for me is CJ Stroud good enough to figure it out? I don't know the answer.
Yeah, with CJ Stroud, like, it all seemed like it was going to come up roses in year 2 after what he did. And then he did the thing to Caleb Williams where they met. He's talking about it. He's like, it'll get better, bro. Don't worry. And then he just had an abysmal second half of the season after that point. So we'll see. I don't know if they're going to keep the OC, if they're going to move on from him. And maybe they do. They resurrect it. They see what goes on. They need another piece there. Like, you really only have Nico Collins. You don't have a lot of other hands. Steph Diggs is on a 1-year contract. He's injured. He's going to be gone. Tank Dell, who knows if he even comes back this year. So you're talking about Mechie, Woods, Xavier Hutchinson. Like, that's not an inspiring wide receiver 2 group. Then do the Deontay Johnson thing. He said he's like, being a team player now. All of a sudden, all it took him was getting traded for peanuts multiple times, right? And then he's like, okay, I guess I'll play ball with you guys. So I don't know, man. It could be a worse place. So maybe he signs in Houston or they draft somebody. We'll see going from there. And they can fix it. But another guy who the offensive line was abysmal, took a ton of hits, sacks. I think he had the highest pressure rate in the NFL. And hopefully that gets fixed. And then next year, they go from there. To the other team we're going to talk about, Tennessee. Now, Tennessee landed themselves the first pick in the draft. So, hey, congrats to you, Tennessee. You guys did something, right? I know they bought in like they were going to go all in this year. They invested in Calvin Ridley. They paid Tony Pollard. They paid all of these veteran players to try to make an impact with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. It did not work. It did not work at all. Ridley was solid. Ridley was a quality NFL wide receiver. But they're paying him a boatload of money.
Yes, they are.
They traded DeAndre Hopkins. And you look at this, like, I'm looking at these guys that are currently caught balls for them outside of Calvin Ridley. We have a freaking Tay Martin site. He's a 27-year-old wide receiver. I don't even know. I've never heard of him. We have a Bryce Oliver. We have a Treylon Burks, who he's on the roster. And then we have a Mason Kinsey at this wide receiver group. That's abysmal. They need to fix that. Their tight end room, Chiga Conquo, I don't know what happened to him. He saw basically no snaps the last game, so monster 2 games that he's just disappeared. They're
crazy.
I don't know. There's gonna be some serious restructuring. They already fired their the general manager, head coach. Supposedly he's staying. Who knows? Which is very weird that head coach is gonna stay and the GM goes. We'll find out what happens, right? I don't know. Going into 2025 with likely them taking a rookie quarterback, are you excited for any of the pieces there? Or are you more worried about this offense as a whole? Because we saw how bad rookie quarterbacks are usually at keeping assets from like producing. So like, where do you kind of lean on this offense? Say it's Cam Ward or say it's Sanders. Where would you lean on this offense?
Yeah, I mean, those guys too, there's no way that I'm going to believe that they're going to be able to support more than one option. Thankfully, this team only has one option, and it's Calvin Ridley. There's two things I'm concerned about. Number one is what this team, presumably with the same regime, because Bill Callahan is staying on at the moment, what this team is going to do with the running back position, because Tajay Spears has looked great in spurts, but he keeps getting injured. Tony Pollard has proven a lot more durable, but the problem is that he's still getting hurt because he's being used so much, right? There's nobody else really, Julius Chestnut, there's nobody else here that can really carry the load beyond Pollard. So what they should be doing is going after a running back in the draft. The problem is this is another team with so many holes. Offensive line. We just went through the pass catchers we've never heard of, and we do this basically for a living. So like it doesn't make any sense. And the usage of Chig, which was great later on, was just non-existent in the beginning of the season. It made no sense. So no, I'm not excited about any of these pieces. But I have to ask you, Jesse, where does Calvin Ridley rank in total air yards on the season in the NFL?
He was like well up there. I know he was playing that deep threat role in this offense. Yep. By the way, they said they wanted to use him like Jamar Chase. That was not how Jamar Chase was used at all this year. So I don't know what they were talking about. They're talking about Jamar Chase's rookie year, I guess, basically, where he was doing that. I'll say he was like top 5 in air yards because I know they were chucking it deep to him.
He was first in total air yards. And the reason we like the air yards metric is because they're supposed to, correlate to fantasy success, at least in part. And while Calvin Ridley was fantasy successful for you, he wasn't someone that you felt really confident playing week in and week out. And he only 3 times on the season finished as a wide receiver 1. More often, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times finished as a wide receiver 3 or worse. So Calvin Ridley, even though he had this decent season, he was like a top 20 wide receiver overall. He was actually horrible for you. He only kind of came through for you in the fantasy playoffs, but you weren't starting him because you didn't make it there with Calvin Ridley.
Right. If you were dependent on Ridley as like your wide receiver 2, which like he was kind of in that wide receiver 3 range, whatever it is, like hey, it was a struggle. Like he had a really bad part of the year. He had a few good games to your point, but like on a points per game basis, Calvin Ridley was not the guy that you wanted. He was the wide receiver 40 in points per game scoring. Like that's atrocious. So if that's your number one option on offense when the Tony Pollard thing's not working, then it's just a problem. So we'll see where they go from here. I don't know. Ideally, you get the quarterback, you build the pieces around them, you make it at least so it's year 2, it's a jump moving forward, kind of like we talk about, like we saw with the Patriots. They at least got the quarterback right, and they go from there. That's what we're hoping Tennessee gets this year, right?
Yeah.
They got a lot of pieces they need to figure out. They did hit on a couple pieces of the offensive line. You could add another piece of the offensive line. You could just build this offensive line out if you want to do that, which is what Tennessee did back in the day with Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how they build. We'll see who the GM comes in that's going to give us an idea. We go from there. But yeah, it's going to be a multiple year build for them. So I know Tennessee Titans fans, you might be looking at 2027, maybe 2027.
Buckle in.
We'll see. Yeah, because they're going to have to get rid of these veterans that they have contracts to. You're going to have to show. So it's going to be a process. It's not going to be right away. Let's go talk about your team. Somehow gave away their number 1 pick. They were like, you know what? We're going to go win a game. And I'm sure you're really thrilled about that by what your New England Patriots did. Yeah, because the craziest thing is Drake May won them 2 games. Freaking Milton and Brissett also did that in way less games played. So I don't know what those guys were doing. They're like, hey, let's throw Joe Milton out there. Oh, yeah, he had the highest rated PFF game of this season at quarterback. Joe Milton went nuclear. It's like, hey, you can't stop me. I'm the greatest of all time. So at least you got a good backup. I'll say that. If you get a second for him, you should probably trade him. Like, you should probably do that, but I don't know if you guys will. But he balled out, man. Like, he looked really good. So that's promising. 22 for 29, 241, a touchdown. He ran it 10 times, too. This was the Joe Milton show. Yeah, he gave Kayshon Boutte, like, came to life. He had his first 100-yard game of the season. Like, he looked really good in this game. Got him over 500 yards. So let me ask you about Keishon Butte. Are you excited about him moving forward?
No, I'm not. I think he was necessary. He looked good, but I'm not going to give him or any New England Patriots this game because Buffalo, I'm trying to figure out if they played a starter on defense. It looks like the secondary was kind of out there. Von Miller was out there a little bit. But yeah, they had a lot of backups playing on defense. And like you said, they kind of handed this game to New England. So no, I'm not super excited, unfortunately. Joe Milton, I think, a lot of that's overblown, but it's nice to see that against the scrubbiest of the scrubs, he was 22 for 29, the accuracy out of nowhere, and made a few really nice plays and throws, especially that touchdown to Butte. That was really nice. But no, I think the Pats have a lot of work to do. This isn't an indication for me of anything, except for the fact that they cannot throw a game when they have to. This is a game everybody knew the Patriots should not win this game, and they won it anyway. Goodbye, Gerard Mayo. No, and I heard this earlier too. Like, he probably won't get another shot as a head coach in the NFL. Of course he wouldn't. Like, he barely got a chance on the New England Patriots, his former team, and that's really only because Robert Kraft probably had a say in that. I'm not saying he doesn't have a future down the line in coaching. I'm not saying he's a horrible head coach. I don't think he's terrible, but I was very kind of curious. It was a curious hiring, and why make a hiring if you're not planning on giving the guy multiple years? It was just stupid all around. Unfortunately, Mayo got caught in that. So.
Well, yeah, they knew this was going to be a multi-year rebuild. Like, they didn't expect Drake May to come in and be like, "Oh, I'm the greatest of all time." Like, you knew it was going to take some time. His clock management and decision making was atrocious throughout the year. Like, he did a lot of really bad things, and I think that's why. But like, he was handpicked. Like, they handpicked him as the post Bill Belichick guy, where they were like, in his contract, they write in and he's going to be the head coach. So like, I don't know what changed for Kraft, where I mean, I'm pretty sure like we can say that's what it was, but like, he was staunchly in favor of it, right? So we'll see. Who knows what comes in? Ben Johnson's interviewing on tomorrow, right? So maybe, or no, Friday. He's interviewing Friday, right? So maybe you guys get him. That would be you got Drake May, at least you could lure him in, build some pieces. You get another wide receiver in that room. We start cooking, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey,
all right,
we got a chance to in the playoffs.
I like it.
I can talk you into that.
Like
let's build that offensive line too. All right, let's just go away with it.
Jesse, before you move on, yes, I do not know the names of the guys on the offensive line. At one point I knew one or two of them. I don't know them. They don't exist. And then there's that one play, of course, where Drake May is scrambling around for 20 seconds, throwing a touchdown pass, and literally there's 3 of the 5 offensive linemen standing around blocking no one. So this line is atrocious. Fix the line. We also need weapons. The defense is okay, but we need to add pieces. It's a whole massive rebuild, but go get some weapons in the free agency. Draft an offensive lineman, bring an offensive lineman in free agency. There's so much that needs to happen here for the Pats. But yeah, I'm not encouraged by the Bills throwing this game so that the Pats didn't get the number 1 pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were like, we're just going to rest our guys. And I'm like, kudos to you guys. This is a team that knows what they're doing and they know how to make it work.
Yeah, a
couple of these teams do not, and that can happen when people that get in the positions of power do not know what they are doing. So we'll see. Do you know if anybody from the regime is going to stay in place moving forward until next year?
Good Lord, please just clean house. I mean, Alex Van Pelt, who cares? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe you can credit him for Drake May's development. I don't know, but that's the problem. We don't know. We don't need to keep anybody around. Yeah, it's just it's ugly at the moment. But yeah, let's talk about Buffalo actually, though, Jesse, because I need to talk about James Cook. Why don't you talk a little bit about Buffalo in this game?
Yeah, James Cook is dope. I think he's second in DVOA among running backs. I know everyone was comparing Derrick Henry and saying he had such an advantage. I'm like, James Cook in a lesser role was just as good as Derrick Henry. He just didn't get all the snaps Derrick Henry got. That's the difference between James Cook and Derrick Henry. He was fantastic with all his touchdowns, his rushing yards over expectation, all of this stuff. He's really good. And me, I've loved myself some James Cook for years. So it was nice seeing him not really getting an increased role except the touchdown, the goal line work, he got that. But in his role, just being even more efficient, and with Josh Allen, those two working well together. Yeah, like Josh Allen Superman. It kind of is what it is. Like,
Oh, yeah.
They wanted to give James Cook the record, right? So they brought him back in for a little bit of time to get him that touchdown, so he could get his 18 touchdown to tie the record or break the franchise record. I can't remember which one it was. But yeah, congrats to him. RB8 on the season. I know people thought that was blasphemous to say before the year, but like, it just shows you like they could probably give him a bigger workload if they want to. They choose not to. Who knows? Maybe one of these years they do it because, like, I don't know about you. Like, Ray Davis looks solid, but like, I was not super impressed with Ray Davis this entire year. He's also really old. He's 25. I think he might be older than James Cook. Yeah, they're either like the same age, which is kind of crazy. And he's a rookie. He's not. I guess with the wide receiver room, what's your kind of thought process with this wide receiver room? Because it's just like a motley crew. Amari Cooper's clearly not living up to the expectations.
Yeah,
they got Keon Coleman doing some things. Khalil Shakir didn't really do much of anything. I don't even think he played in this game. So, yeah, moving forward with the kind of limited wide receiver room they have, I guess is what I would phrase it, with Josh Allen. How far do you think the team can go with James Cook and those wide receivers? Dalton Kincaid, who was incredibly just a massive bust. We can talk about him too. What do you think they can win a Super Bowl?
Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be possible. But yeah, Josh Allen can do anything. He's beaten the two best teams in football already this season in the Chiefs and the Lions. Yeah, he can do whatever the hell he wants, and he can account for all 5-6 touchdowns that the team gets because he's done that multiple times this season. It doesn't matter. But James Cook is an interesting player because he's explosive and he has the ability to kind of fill in the gaps, kind of quite literally, and be efficient as hell in the work that he gets. The wide receiver room, I don't know. Amari Cooper, I think, has just had a weird run out of like injury, trade, learning a new team. He's got a family matter now. So I don't know that he's probably going to be an exceptional buy in the offseason. And then like you pick him up in the last round or two of your fantasy drafts and redraft in August. I mean, he could end up being the number one wide receiver next year. But can this team win a Super Bowl? Yeah. And will they? It's highly likely. I don't know if they're going to be able to beat Detroit again or Philly. I don't know if they're going to be able to beat KC again or Baltimore, but they can. This is one of the best teams in the NFL. Quick question for you on James Cook. We mentioned his finish. He was 8th in the NFL, and for fantasy, RB8. Where was he expected fantasy points per game? RB what?
Ooh, it's lower. It's like definitely in the middle. It's like mid-range RB2-ish territory. Like he's like RB17 or something, probably that range.
22, RB22. That includes week 18, where he didn't do a ton because Ray Davis was in there. But RB22 and expected fantasy points per game, one of, if not the most efficient running backs in the league this season.
Yes. On a career yards per carry basis, to give kind of context to how good James Cook has been, Derrick Henry is at 4.9 yards per carry. That's 16th best in NFL history. Is tied with Aaron Jones. James Cook is right there with those guys, 4.9 yards per carry. So like that shows you just how good he's been on the ground in his time there. He's gonna, as long as it's with Josh Allen, man, it's gonna stay. He had less carries this year than he did last year, which is kind of crazy to think about. Yeah. He just had the massive touchdowns go his way. So if they increase his role next year, he could potentially, I don't think it's likely, but potentially finish as the top 5 guy if it all breaks right for him next year. But yeah, he's just dope, man. I like muscles from James Cook. Anytime we get to talk about James Cook, I'm like, yeah, we'll do that. All right, let's go to our next game. I think it's New York, Philadelphia. That's the game we're having next.
Yes.
Let's go there. Yes, it is. All right. So, the Eagles found a way to win without Jalen Hurts. Tanner McKee, that's right. I don't think many people know who that is. He's a quarterback out of Stanford who has career attempts of 45 in his NFL career. 45 attempts, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. The GOAT, we'll just say he's that. Like, he's that good. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions in his entire NFL career. All happened this year, his last 2 weeks. So
give that boy a shot.
Yeah, he threw it 41 times in this game. Philly was like, hey, yo, let's do some things to see if we can, because they had an outside chance to get the 1 seed, right? If it worked right for them, but it did not happen for them. But yeah, like Philly's just great. Like I think they're probably the best overall team right now in the NFL. If Jalen Hurts comes back, he's still dealing with a concussion. If they don't have Hurts, like that's a wrap. Like it's going to be over for them. So hopefully they get Jalen Hurts back. But when you look at this Philadelphia roster, I know you put out a statement about this earlier where you're talking about Saquon Barkley and Hurts are limiting AJB and Devonta Smith. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about those wide receivers moving forward? Are you still as worried about them moving forward going in 2025, 2026? considering how just valuable and insane Saquon and Hurts are on the ground.
Yeah, and it's mostly touchdowns, right? AJ Brown was, by all metrics, phenomenal this season. We talked about yards per route run. On a minimum 50 targets, Jesse, we said BTJ was 11th out of all pass catchers. Where do you think AJB finished yards per route run?
He's real high. I'll say wide receiver 4. Like he's right
Second.
up there. I know.
Number 2.
Yeah, every time.
There's only one guy above him, but only him and this other guy, which I'm going to hold for later, finished over 3.0. He was at 3.22 yards per route run. Absolutely insane for the amount of volume that he's seen. He's a great wide receiver. My concern is that AJ Brown and Devonta Smith have proven with this iteration of the Philadelphia offense that they cannot coexist within the same game, except for, I think maybe 1 or 2 games this season. But it's, if one goes off or has a good game, the other one cannot, simply because A, the volume is with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts on the ground, and B, the touchdowns are with Saquon Barkley and Jalen Hurts on the ground. So these guys really, really struggle to get home, both of them. That really sucks for my team, where I have Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, and Devonta Smith on the same squad. Not a good look for that team.
Yeah, so the last 3 years with Hurts at the quarterback, what's the highest pass rate that you think they had in any one of those 3 years?
The highest pass rate for the Philadelphia Eagles?
Mm-hmm. Any one of those 3 seasons?
I'm going to say, what's high? Like 55% is probably.
Yeah, like team leaders will be full so far. It's like the highest is like 70. The lowest is about 45.
All right, so let's say 58%.
Ooh, you are a little high. The highest they've had in this 3-year window is 54%. Okay. This year they were bottom in the league in pass rate. They were last. They were worse than they were 2 years ago. They were 44% pass opportunities. That's the worst in Baltimore, worse than Green Bay. They pound the rock. It just shows you the limitations of the offense, because if you don't pass enough, the volume's not going to be there. So we're going to need to see a bounce back from AJ Brown to hit his ceiling. He's very much a high floor play. And Devonta Smith's just like better in best ball at this point. Even though he's a really, really good wide receiver, right? It's just so hard to start with. And I'm with you. It sucks. Like AJ Brown's one of the clearly most talented wide receivers in the NFL. You can put him up against anybody. It's just his quarterbacks the entire time have been Ryan Tannehill, Jalen Hurts, just like guys that are just not going to pass it a lot. So it's just unfortunate situation holds him back, but it is what it is. I will say, like, you could, like, I'm not saying to avoid him, but just don't expect him to be like the wide receiver 1 ever, because he got as close as you get last year at 150 something targets. He got nowhere near that this year, which sucked for him.
And
it is, right?
Well, Jamie, we'll get to your question in a second, just seeing it. But we'll segue into it by saying, where do you have AJ Brown among wide receivers in your dynasty rankings? If they're not done, where would you put him at the moment?
If I'm doing it like blank slate, not for contender or rebuilding, I'll say he's like a back end wide receiver 1, like mid-range, high end wide receiver 2 type, like in there. Like I'm not like, I'll take him in probably like round 5 of a dynasty startup in there, but I'm not going to reach for him just because I know the value he's getting older too. He's gonna be 28. That's also the problem on top of it too, right? So there's just the upside just not there. But he's got the name cachet, so you can always move him. But it's just I know you did rankings for ATR. Where do you have him ranked at?
I'm trying to check, but I need to log back in and edit my account info. It's either 14 or 15. Wide receiver 14 or 15. But T. Higgins is ahead of him. Jackson Smith and Jigba is ahead of him. I'm trying to think of who. Lad McConkey is ahead of him. So he's 14, he's 15, and it has nothing to do with age. It has nothing to do with his ability. It has everything to do with the lack of production relative to what he should be giving you, simply because of how he's used in this offense.
Yeah, it just kind of is what it is, right? Like it's unfortunate, but like there's limitations, and we have to take that into account when we're ranking these players. Because if you have AJ Brown who's turning 28, and you have, say, like Lad McConkey, and you project them for similar production, take the other guy. The value inflation is just there. It is what it is. It's unfortunate, but that's the fanciest NFL game. Okay, so this wide receiver class sucks, especially in this range of picks.
Sure.
You're gonna get a bad, like, not a bad wide receiver, but like I guess it depends what you're doing with the pick. Yeah, that seems fair. I don't want to pay for Keon Coleman because he was not good. My whole thing is I don't want to buy face planners in year 2. It's different than the JSNs, the guys that have the insulation. People did not like Keon Coleman. Like, they did not like him as prospects. His rookie year was not good. So you need him to be like an outlier where he beats all the expectations and outproduces for him to substantially gain dynasty value like James Williams is this year. Otherwise, it's going to be people still hating against him. Even if he's solid, they'll be like, oh, yeah, it's Keon Coleman, right? So as a mindset for dynasty approach, I don't like investing in these guys. I would flip him for the 207 and just live with that pick personally. Is that where you're at?
Yeah, agree. He is my wide receiver 45 at the moment. He's just going to be hit or miss. He's not going to be an alpha. I think Dalton Kincaid still has a better chance of being an alpha than Keon Coleman. The nice thing about Coleman is he's utilized in the red zone. We saw that come to fruition many times. But you know who else is utilized in the red zone? Josh Allen, calling his own number all the time. So Keon Coleman is just going to be a hit or miss guy. I think he's a talented guy, but right now, receivers I have ahead of him quite easily. Cooper Kupp, I have ahead of Keon Coleman at his advanced age. Josh Downs, Jaden Reed, Rashid Shaheed, Darnell Mooney.
Hell yeah.
These guys are ahead of Keon Coleman. Unfortunately, Tank Dell is not. But yeah, so it's just, you know, that's where he lives, and I don't see it getting much better for him. And what do you hope he becomes? Mike Evans? Oh, okay. You know, it's not going to happen. So yeah, well, exactly. So yeah, if anybody wants him, great. I sold Keon Coleman at the beginning of this offseason. I received JSN, Mark Andrews, and something else in return, but I also sent Brock Bowers. So,
okay. You know, I was like, hold on,
you
what?
win some, you lose some. Had Trey McBride.
I mean, you got a good package.
Yeah, but I got the JSN. So, but yeah, this is the thing is Keon Coleman was, that was always the concern with him. He was more of a contested catch guy. He wins them, but you know, that's about it.
Yeah, he was very much a developmental wide receiver. He is young, so like when you get into the really old wide receivers, if I'm in a teardown, I don't mind flipping Cooper Kupp for him just because I know the cachet with Cooper Kupp. You know what I'm saying? But like if I'm trying to contend, yeah, I'll take Cooper Kupp. I'll live with that, roll with that. So yeah. And when you get into this range of wide receiver, it's kind of just like, what are you looking for? What's your team build? I mean, we can talk about this forever, but it's just yeah. He's not a wide receiver I'm targeting. It's the way you're going to get him if you like him is have him as a throw-in in deals if you want to get him. Don't make him the focal point of your deal. Because if you're doing that, you're going to lose the deal basically every time. So I would just go that way.
Let's not talk about the Giants, but let's talk about Tyrone Tracy real quick. And you know, Malik Neighbors, we don't need to discuss. He's awesome. He's the wide receiver one in this class. You know, he's basically untouchable at this point. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be. It does not matter. But Tyrone Tracy is interesting because I think this team has to bring in a running back, whether through free agency or the draft. They probably have to bring in multiple running backs. Can Tyrone Tracy hold the job, and is he valuable enough even if they bring in another guy?
Yeah, I think he can hold the job depending on who it is, right? Like, he wasn't like a mind-blowing where you watch him and you're like, oh my God, this guy's incredible. But there is a difference watching him and Devin Singletary play where you see the upside that he presents. And Singletary's still under contract. So Singletary has another year on his contract. So, like, that guy also has to beat out Singletary, whoever it is. But to your point, they're going to bring someone in. Eric Gray is just – see Eric Gray. It's nice knowing you. Unless he's continuing to do the special teams kickoff stuff, like, Eric Gray really doesn't have a role in this offense. So, with how deep running back is, I think best case they bring in, like, a day 3 running back. Worst case, maybe they draft someone day 2 because they really like him and he's above consensus. And then you have competition. So, with these guys like Chase Browns, Tyrone Tracy's, if I could move them for a first, which – I did right around the deadline in a couple of teams. That's the way to do it. Yeah, if you believe in those early second picks, then go for it. If you want to write it out, I just think there's a little bit more risk with this type of player because it's on the draft capital cancellation. But I think he's a good, promising young player who got 1,000 total yards. He didn't get started till like a couple of weeks. Like it took him a while to get a job, right? And he had to earn it against Seattle and finally took off. He has a little bit of like fumble issues, a little bit of jobs like ball security where he fumbled a few times. He fumbled 5 times this year. So if he cleans that up with, I guess they're bringing Dayball back. I think that's the biggest worry. If they get rid of the head coach, then you're probably going to be in trouble. So that's why if you always trade these guys for first, it's just safety. So yeah, just go do that because Dayball goes, there goes all the security he has. And clearly they could bring someone else in the draft. And before you know it, you're like, what happened to Tyrone Tracy? Oh, this guy, I don't know. Omarion Hampton is the starting running back for the Giants next year. Like that could entirely be possible, right? So, yeah. Where do you have him ranked in Dynasty? Just curious.
Unfortunately, he's my RB18. I just moved him down a couple spots because I was like, oh no, I can't get him below Najee Harris. I can't get him below the corpse of Joe Mixon. I struggle to put him below James Conner. And J.K. Dobbins, I have below him at the moment. So, I just think that, he's there. I think he's hovering around RB20, but these RB rankings are so volatile in Dynasty. You never know, but I think he has a role regardless of who gets brought in, even if they bring in, let's say they bring in Genty, right? I mean, Genty is awesome, of course, right? You said Omarion Hampton, right? Tracy is not going to get a ton of work, but he still could see 8 to 10 opportunities a game. I think he should, and they can use him as a receiver in the receiving game. He's a former receiver. They can put 2 backs in the backfield. We know Dable has the ability to scheme these things up, and they can still get him the ball. So I like his ability to stay relevant. He can be productive on fewer reps, but of course, there's the opportunity and the possibility that there's another team with a ton of holes. They don't have the opportunity to bring in a running back this year. And they just, run it back with a day 3 guy or, bring in a crappy free agent like Devin Singletary, and Tyrone Tracy is the guy again.
Yeah, like he was the RB13 in targets. He had like 53 targets on running back. It's a good number. That's a solid starting space. And to your point, like that's always been his skill set, his advantage. Playmaker in space, good out of the backfield because he's that wide receiver. So, yeah, he could be a guy that hangs on. Like Daboll likes him, clearly gave him the job. Daboll was like, hey, as long as you don't fumble, dude, it's your job. So if he just cleans that up, right? So I'm excited to see what happens to him this offseason. It could go about 10 different ways. But you could be looking at another year. And with this type of like day 3 picks, I always view them as like older players where it's just, you decide to play it like a year at a time with them. You don't have the installation locked in. So you treat them like a Joe Mixon, you treat them like those guys because those guys aren't guaranteed anything in either of the day 3 running backs. So if you want to take the upside of the young guy, go for it. I think he's a good young player. It's like him and Neighbors are the 2 bright spots for this team this year.
Yes.
So, and yeah, they're gonna hopefully get a quarterback. We'll see what happens. Who knows, man? The Giants ship just he's moving without rudders at this point. I don't know what to tell people. It's just it could be a rough another season for them. Let's go to maybe just no paddles up, just going up the shore with nothing. Let's go talk about a fun offense. That's Tampa Bay because I don't really want to talk about the Saints because oh my goodness, the Saints are disaster. It's going to be a disaster next year for them. So they got Shaheed, they got Olave. Outside of that, I mean, Kamara's going to get volume, but like they could use a running back unless they freaking believe in Kendrick Miller. That guy continually gets injured all the time. It's whatever. Enough for the Saints. We did. Sorry, Saints fans. It's just
tried.
We did. Your guy you liked a lot was Baker Mayfield. He absolutely balled out this year. Baker was the quarterback 4. Freaking 40 touchdowns. He was actually good on the ground. He gave you like a peak Aaron Rodgers on the season where he almost had 400 rushing yards, which is like the key for the upside of what he did. So Liam Cohen is interviewing for potential jobs. If Liam Cohen moves on, that's another year of a new OC taking over, which would be the 3rd, might be the 4th or 5th straight year for Baker at this point. I don't know. If Liam Cohen moves on, are you worried for Baker Mayfield on this offense, or are you just not worried about Baker Mayfield because he's that good of a quarterback at this point in time?
Yeah. Again, he's on that list of former 101s. I'm not worried about Baker Mayfield. These are the guys you invest in. He's got the contract and the security. He's Jalen McMillan, who we're going to talk about in a minute. Mike Evans will be back. Cade Otton will be healthy. They could run out 2 tight ends and 22 personnel all season long. Go ahead and just put 2 wide receivers on the field. You're good. And Baker Mayfield can make a crap ton of production out of what they're rolling out there. So no, I'm not worried about it. I think this team would do well to get a veteran wide receiver, a Chris Godwin type on a cheaper contract, and then roll, maybe somebody on the outside. I'm not thinking of who that could be, but the Tyler Lockett type, maybe not Tyler Lockett, maybe Tyler Lockett. But it would be interesting to see how that could potentially open up this offense even more, assuming Chris Godwin goes. But yeah, Baker's been great. And of course, your guy, Bucky Irving. We got to talk about Bucky Irving. Absolutely crushed this year. Absolute stud. Rashad White is nothing, as was predicted by many, yourself included. Bucky crushed.
Yeah, that was the biggest mistake I made. Was fading Bucky basically do the combine because RB1, and I was like, he's too small, slow. It's never gonna. I remember JJ Zacharyson had a tweet out early after the combine and how bad his performance was. It was like running backs at his size who ran at the speed he did it. It was basically like to average 10 points per game. It was basically like Tim Hightower, and that's the entire list of guys who've done it. So I was like, we're really fighting outlier status. That's what I should have bought into it and be like, you know what, he's that good. You know what, you live and you learn. Sometimes you strike out. We did that. I do want to highlight with Bucky though. Jacob Gibbs put out this really cool tweet where it's like yards per rush, and it's like in their first 17 games, running backs who have over 1,000 rushing yards, 350 receiving yards. Bucky is one of 11 career NFL running backs since 2000. He's the second most yards per rush at 5.4. He's ahead of Arian Foster, ahead of Saquon, Ezekiel Elliott, LaDainian Tomlinson. If you're listening on the names, it's like Doug Martin, Matt Forte. These are all stud running backs. He was that guy, and all his metrics just scream difference-making star, missed tackles, force, everything you want to do. So I know we talked about Tyrone Tracy because Bucky was a day 3 guy too as well, but like you have to feel so much better about Bucky being the locked-in starter, at least for this upcoming season. A lot can change 2 years from now with running backs, but I think we know he's going to be the starter next year because he was that good. Just said, like, this is my job. I'm taking it. Oh, yeah. How high do you have him ranked? And are you willing, like, what's the most you would pay for him in Dynasty right now to get Bucky on your roster?
Crap ton. I have him ranked RB8 at the moment. I have Chase Brown ahead of him. I don't feel comfortable with that. I have Kyron Williams, another guy who had a shitty combine, ahead of him. I don't feel comfortable with that. I could push him up to RB6 pretty easily. He's not going above Devon Achane or Saquon Barkley. That's not happening. But RB6 makes a ton of sense to me. Right now, he's my RB8 only because Rashad White is still there. He's probably still going to be there, and he's going to take that receiving volume. But Bucky has proven that he can get there anyway. It doesn't matter. The other thing that's really interesting here, though, outside of Bucky, is Jalen McMillan had one of the best runouts in the fantasy playoffs of anyone. He's absolutely crushed for you and your fantasy teams. He looks phenomenal. And like we said earlier last week on another show, we have the idea of Chris Godwin probably being priced out because Jalen McMillan looked good, because Cade Otton played decently in that role as well. And they've proven that they have a long line of tight ends. Devin Culp is there. The guy playing ahead of him, Payne Durham, was playing ahead of Culp for a while as well. So they have 3 good tight ends, but all of it comes back to Baker and this offensive line. So Bucky, Jalen McMillan, the future is bright. And Mike Evans, I think, will stick around for as long as he possibly can. He's got probably one more year of 1,000 yards in him, I would guess, because things just broke weirdly for him. I think he can do it again, one more season. And that, this team is scary as an NFL team in the playoffs, and they're going to go far, I think, until they run into a juggernaut, but they got a chance to beat that juggernaut.
For sure. They need to work on the defense like that. They need to fix the defense because that defense is nowhere near what it has been. Did you already answer this Isaiah Bond question for Jamie? Or no?
I don't even know who Isaiah Bond is. Is he like a former Raider?
So he's a wide receiver. He's a rookie. He's from Texas who's coming into the league. I don't think he's good because, like with McMillan, he's going to play a lot in the slot. That's kind of the appeal for Jalen McMillan. He's an inside-outside player who can play both for you. So ideally, what you want to get is you want another outside weapon who can let McMillan transition more to the slot, play the Chris Godwin role. Then you have a guy, because if you're putting McMillan on the outside, like he can do it. It's not a strength specialty. I don't know. Like we need draft capital for Bond and all of these things, right, to see if he could earn that type of role. There's a lot with Texas that's really up in the air, and I haven't paid enough attention to him, but I would say maybe. But you kind of already have that guy in Jalen, so you want to see it. And then problem is with this wide receiver class, like it's just not very good, especially outside wide receivers.
Who's an outside guy? Is there an outside guy that they could get maybe who's like, round 2, someone who's a little under the radar, who could at least stretch the field for them?
Yeah, do you want like a Mike Evans doppelganger, or like what are we looking for here? Because you can do like you can get the guy out of Stanford, Ao Manor, who's like kind of that guy. Bond's a little bit like slighter frame. I don't know.
White?
You kind of have to dig into these rankings a little bit. So I don't know. Ricky White, you could do it. I thought he was going back to. Is he? So he's coming out. Okay. Yes. White has a lot of question marks about him just because he played UNLV in these places, right, that are lower tier programs. So we'll see how he does at the combine and the pro day. If he gets the draft capital, there's bodies, there's guys that will with draft classes in general. I don't want to hate on them. There's gonna be guys that step forward. It's just really hard with this class of wide receiver. So if you're building through the wide receiver, man, it's like Essie's point. Bond hasn't declared yet. Don't want to get too much into rookies. With this free agency class though, it's not. I haven't paid too much attention to it. From what I've seen, though, it's not appealing at all.
Yeah.
They want you to lose to Higgins. If Deontay Johnson doesn't sign somewhere, it's just kind of just like, so they got to add somebody, though. So I'm assuming they'll get somebody in that wide receiver room because the other guys are just bodies pretty much. I know there's one guy who I'm blanking on that's on their roster who's done some things for them, but it's just not been very good. It's Trey Palmer. Yeah, it's Trey Palmer. It's Jared. It's just is what it is, right? So, yeah. I think I could be. All right, let's go to the next game. Sorry, I'm all over the place with rankings right now. All right, let's talk about Kansas City, Denver. So how about that? Kansas City got their teeth kicked in because they decided to bench everyone. And we talked about this on Sunday's Sit Start Show with Carson Wentz. It's going to go one or two ways. It's going to be super high highs and super low lows. It was just super low lows the entire game. Yeah, he was under constant pressure. It was just abysmal. They benched too many guys. He didn't do the offense did nothing. Carson Steele led the team in points. Freaking the special team returner Nico Ramigo is like a guy that I found out about a couple weeks ago exists. Yeah, that's all you need to know about him. He led the team in
he's a guy that exists.
Yeah, he's a guy that exists. That's the best thing I can say. I won't spend too much time talking about Kansas City. I guess we'll talk about Pacheco. Do you think he's going to hold on to the job moving against next year? Because he's another day 3 guy, right? That was round 7. Do you think he holds on to the job, or do you think they're going to bring in competition that's going to push him for the job next year in 2025?
I think they have to. They've kind of been trying to lighten his load for the last couple of years. We saw the Jarrett McKinnon experiment. We saw the Clyde Edwards-Helaire experiment. Ultimately, both of those failed. Edwards-Helaire because he's not very good, and McKinnon because he's just aged out and not as explosive. But Isaiah Pacheco is a really good running back, but they need to lighten his load, and that was proven this year. What was also proven is when he went out with injury and off this team's production plummeted, and it was a struggle for them. So they kind of went all in on Isaiah Pacheco and this run game over the last year and a half, 2 years. It's worked well for them, but they need another body back there. So I think the days of Isaiah production Isaiah Pacheco's RB1 production are over. I call him high end RB2 these days.
Yeah, they brought in Kareem Hunt, which shows you how bad the running back room was, where Kareem Hunt came in and just stole all of the work. Kareem Hunt is like ghost of himself. He's got no speed. He's like, there's negative juice behind him. He tries to move. It's like a slow plotter. He had 232 opportunities with this offense in 13 games. They were feeding him the rock like he was a bell cow. And I'm like, that shows you the kind of the issues Kansas City's offense was having right there, where they're like, yeah, we got Kareem Hunt. He's like 30 years old, not a good running back anymore, but we're going to pound him the rock with him. So, yeah, I think they're going to bring somebody in. I don't know if it's going to be a high draft pick. They've already done it with CH. They probably have PTSD from the CH experience. So Who knows? But yeah, if they bring in somebody that's, like, maybe like a Judkins or Henderson, one of those guys that gives them an explosive element. They could do a little bit of both. It would be fun to pair those so you don't have to depend on Pacheco for 300 touches this season.
Yeah. Well, look, they could go get Najee Harris or Jalen Warren.
Oh, don't do Najee. You got that guy, man. Like, just bring back Kareem Hunt if you're going to do that again because it'll cost you so much less. Yeah, I don't. Okay, I'm hating on Najee a little bit too much. Like, I think he's fine enough already. It's just he just never lived up to the expectations around one. Him or freaking ETN, both of those guys. For Denver, we're getting the emergence of Marvin Mims, but like his route participation is still below 40%. So it's strictly in the slot or inline. When he's outside, his like yards per hour run is below 1. So he's the ultimate inside slot guy. Keep him inside. They have a slot right receiver they can do from there. They have Cortland Sutton, who you've been preaching Cortland Sutton nonstop, and he's been balling out. I think, was he top 12 wide receiver in the season? I think he still was, right? Wide receiver 13 at the end of the year, so close. I think on bunch per game he might be there, but right there. He was really good. He was the one guy you could truly count on. So for Bo Nix moving forward, they're clearly bringing in a running back, because this running back room was a disaster this year. They gave Javonte Williams how many touches? Freaking 200 plus touches, and he was that bad. Like, no, thank you. We're not going to do that again, right? What do you think they do moving forward? Like, do you think they're able to bring in another wide receiver to kind of help something out with Mims and like no one else? Like, do you think they can take a big step forward?
I think it's probably a tight end, to be fair. I think if you have Mims and if you have Cortland Sutton, I think what you need that middle of the field presence and a high-end tight end. I'm not sure what free agents are out there, but I'm sure there's going to be a couple of them out there. And then certainly, you're able to stretch the field. Now you can get a big slot as well in the draft, like Chris Godwin, right? That type of player would be awesome and effectively operates as a tight end for you. So that's fine. But yeah, the issue is really just the blocking in the run game. You need to fortify this offensive line, and you need to get a back there who can read a goddamn line and holes and figure out when to cut back. So Sean Payton must be out of his mind with how abysmal the running game has been. Audric Estime, I'm sorry, is not an NFL quality running back, but he might be the best running back on this team. I really like Jimmy McLaughlin, but he's just not NFL caliber because he's not going to hold up. And he's explosive, which is great, but like you can only give him so many touches per game. So yeah, it's bad back there in the backfield. This defense, thankfully, is really good. I don't think this year, I don't think they're going to make noise. They're going to run into Buffalo this weekend, but I think they have a chance to make noise next season, as early as next season. And then in year 3 of Bo Nix, I think this team is going to, if they play their cards right, and they should, this team is going to be really difficult to deal with.
Well, yeah, they got the trenches figured out. Like, they got what a lot of teams hope for. Like, the O-line's good. The D-line will generate a ton of pressures. They figured that part out. They just got to build the rest of it, right? They got to get the rest of the pieces in there. So if they can do that, like, they could be a borderline, maybe not like Super Bowl contender, but they could push into that range we talked about, just because I want to see a little bit more from Bo Nix before I say that. But, like, there's pieces there.
Cortland Sutton, question for you. How many end zone targets did he have this season?
A ton, like a billion. But for real, no, yeah, probably like maybe like in the 20s somewhere, like 23.
It's a good guess. I will tell you the league high was 18.
Oh, not even close. I overshot the moon on that. I'll say 15.
He had 18. He was tied with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. It was Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Cortland Sutton leading the league in end zone targets. You know who was fourth? Marvin Harrison. Or sorry, he was fifth. Marvin Harrison was. And we talked about this wide receiver 9 with 14 end zone targets, Rome Odunze. So, listen, the future is bright for some of these guys, but Cortland Sutton leading the league in end zone targets, I doubt you had that on your bingo cards this year.
Yeah, I don't think anybody thought that was going to happen, particularly because the skill sets between those two players didn't seem like they matched from him and Nix. But, like, Sutton looks like he's back to being the guy from a few years ago that put up like 1,200 plus yards. Back in 2019, it was like 1,100 yards. Like, he just has dealt with injuries and hasn't been healthy. He looks like he gets set a career high in targets this year. I think that probably surprises a lot of people, but he's really good, man. Now he's gonna be age 30 next year. We'll see how long he's gonna last for, but you can get maybe like a couple more years out of him where he can be good NFL wide receiver. But you have an X. Those guys are hard to find.
Second in the league in air yards, only behind Calvin Ridley.
It's just crazy. There was like, speaking of like Bo Nix through like the longest play of the year, like air yards to like, I think it was Mims downfield or whatever, where you're like, that's Bo. And you showed the yardage chart. And it was like, everything's below the line on scrimmage. And then there's one just ball downfield. I'm like, okay, all right. All right, let's go to Vegas and the Chargers. Oh boy. Okay. Yeah, exciting stuff. Herbert has been awesome this year. Well, let's talk about Herbert for a second, and then we can kind of dispense the Dobbins or whatever. But yeah, Herbert's been on a tear since the bye. He's been really good. He finished the season top 12 quarterback. Where are you at with Justin Herbert? Are you wanting to buy him, even though he's getting pretty pricey as far as dynasty value? And then do you think he can take the Chargers to the next level because it is the Chargers after all, and they've never been able to really put it all together for the longest time. Where are you kind of at with Justin Herbert in this offense moving forward?
Yes, and yes, I will buy him. And even though he's pricey, and yes, I think he can lead this team to a Super Bowl, especially with Jim Harbaugh figuring out the defense. I'd say certainly by year 3, but probably next year. This team has already made the playoffs. They should not have done that legitimately. I know the AFC is effectively wide open after the first 3. That's the reason Denver's in the playoffs, the reason Houston's in the playoffs. But the Chargers have really looked good. Their offensive line is so good, Jesse. We know this, we expected this, but because they're relying on the run game, Herbert has that freedom to, kind of limit his volume and then, show that extreme efficiency. What's nice to see is that over the course of the season, the first month was bad in terms of Justin Herbert volume. We all panicked, but it's nice to see that he approached 40 attempts. He didn't get there, but multiple times with 38, 39, 36 attempts in a game. And that's the kind of volume that you want to see. He really has that ability to go off in certain games and be that stable QB1. I'll ask you the question, Jesse, where do you think I have Justin Herbert ranked as my dynasty quarterback? What?
I saw the rankings. I don't remember where you had Herbert, so I will say QB 7 in that range.
Yep.
All right.
Not yet above Patrick Mahomes. I feel terrible about that, but Patrick Mahomes is still Patrick Mahomes. He can absolutely go off next season. We'll see. But above Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, Bo Nix, Drake May, Baker Mayfield, CJ Stroud, should be no surprise he's above those guys. I could push him above Patrick Mahomes too. Yeah, QB 7 in Dynasty, and you can draft him comfortably next year in redraft leagues as your QB1.
Yeah, people were terrified about the passing line. He threw it over 500 times, and I would have bet the under on that going into the year. I was a little bit worried, but I did think people overpaid for Herbert. Like he was going into 4th round of startups, and I was like, we've gone too far here, folks. Like this guy is perennially a really, really good fantasy quarterback. And what does he do? Puts up another top 12 season. So only last year, 2023, how bad 2023 was, and because he was injured, did he fall outside top 12 quarterbacks? He's had 4 top 12 finishes. He also has a top 2 finish in 2021. I think the guy is basically a locked-in top 12 quarterback for the next 5 years, even with Harbaugh. Because, remember he had the plantar fasciitis? It didn't matter. He still ran enough, 69 attempts. He checks every box. He's just really good at one guy. Where are you at with Dobbins? I know you said you had him ranked right in that range, kind of with Pacheco. Do you think they're going to re-sign him because he was on the cheapest contract possible? If they don't re-sign him, where do you think Dobbins ends up?
I don't know, but I don't think I care. I mean, I think Dobbins is kind of 1-year asset. I'll draft him and redraft when he lands, but this is the type of guy that I'm not going to bet on. I think he was a product of his offensive line. He's been a product of his offensive line his whole career, and he was a super amazing player and ridiculously explosive. He still has some of that back, but he's aging now. He has that injury history. We see, he's struggled with injury again this season. We're going to see how, healthy he ends up through this playoff run. If they do make a run, no, I don't want any part of him. He's my RB19. I have him above James Conner, and I'm going to move James Conner above him. That's how concerned I am about J.K. Dobbins. He's my RB20.
Yeah, I think when you get into these veteran running backs, I think he's 26 years old. Yeah, he's 26. So you get into this range of running back, I just care about short-term production. So if he lands on a good offense, I'll be buying. If he doesn't land on a good offense, he was by far their best running back. I don't want to mince words with it. I liked the rookie. He did not pan out there. Obviously, he did not do what we hoped. No. Dobbins even gave him an opening with a window with an injury. He came back, was like, "I'm J.K. Dobbins. Y'all are just Haskins. No, thank you, any one of these other guys." So. This seems like a team that's clearly going to add to the running back room. I would like to see J.K. Dobbins come back there. If he does, then I'll be interested. But yeah, it's
I think we agree. Let's not talk about it, but I think we agree. Lad, hell yes. QJ, hell no. I'm not buying that.
Yes, Lad all day. I don't care the cost. Just pay. Lad easily over Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not doing that. It's no contest on that. For the Vegas Raiders, we're not saying too much about it. It's Jacoby Myers. It's Brock Bowers. Do you think they get a quarterback? And what the heck do you think happens to this running back room? Because it is a dumpster fire running back room moving into 2025.
They have to get a quarterback. in the draft. I don't care who it is, but they have to get a quarterback. It can be Sanders. It can be Cam Ward. It could be Kyle McCord. Who cares? Go get some quarterback in this draft and give him a chance. Aiden O'Connell is fine, but he's clearly not very mobile. That's a big concern these days in the NFL. Hell, go trade for Joe Milton. Why not? Give it a shot. See what can happen. Send a third, send a fourth
I like it.
and a third for Joe Milton. Go ahead. And just give it a shot. But yeah, no, I don't think this team is anywhere close. This is another team with a ton of holes. Max Crosby, I don't know what his contract situation is, but I think he's probably locked up next year. This defense can be decent, but they need a whole new coaching staff. They need a whole new everything over there in Vegas. And they need to draft a running back too. They'll probably spend most of their draft on offense, which means, and if they do, hopefully, if they do, that could be fantasy goodness. But with a rookie quarterback, is it going to be Bowers? Is it going to be Jacoby? Probably going to be Bowers. But Bowers could take a production hit, if they draft Shedeur Sanders, right? I don't know that I necessarily expect Brock Bowers to do what he did this year with Sanders.
Well, yeah, with it's just the whole situation in general. It's Tom Kolesko, the guy who put the Chargers into just a terrible cap situation. It's likely going to do the same thing on the Raiders. He's going to try to build a contender out of this roster, and it's likely going to be. So I don't know why, what reason the Raiders had for hiring him. When it happened, I go, oh no, that's not good. And we're gonna see. Now he did hit on Bowers. You got Bowers. You got Jacoby Myers for really cheap. He's done a couple of good things there, but just overall, when you're putting Antonio Pierce as your head coach, it's just not the best situation, and that clearly that's what happened. So it just did not go well with Antonio Pierce in year 2. So we'll see who their head coach is. I'm not sure who it's going to be, but that'll kind of dictate what happens to Bowers in that situation. But Bowers is tight end 1 by a landslide in Dynasty for most people. So yeah, it could be. I don't want to say it's the Samuel Porter thing for last year, but he might be getting a tad bit overvalued because people are talking about him in startup ranges, even in tight end premium pluses where it's top 105. And I'm all right, well, slow to roll. We're getting real pricey with him, but I understand it, man. The guy's, he's that guy. It's really hard to fade him. So even in a bad situation, all-time record in rookie receptions. So it's what it is. Okay.
Got 4 games left. 4 games.
I know we got to move. All right, let's talk about my Seahawks and just they fired Grubb, so I don't know what's going to happen with that with this offense. I think it's more just they had differentiating decisions that they could not agree upon. We'll just say that they wanted them to run more. Ryan Grubb was like, "Have you seen my offensive line, bro? I'm not going to run behind this offensive line." It did not go well. Yeah, but to your point on JSN and Metcalf, do you have concerns about them? Considering there's going to be a new OC, stuff's going to change. Geno's coming back, even though it's the weirdest boost conference of all time. And then on the Rams side, should Puka Nacua be basically the wide receiver too? Is that where I would have been dicey because he's that good? But yeah, we can talk about him for a little bit if you have concerns about Stafford.
Well, let's start with the Rams because that question is easy for me. I think he's my wide receiver 3. Let me double check right now my dynasty rankings. Again, this is PPR. He's my wide receiver 3. I have him ahead of CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra and Neighbors. I could not put Justin Jefferson behind Puka Nacua, but I get it if you do, right? We either got a first-year starting quarterback and JJ McCarthy thrown to him next year, or we got Sam Darnold, who limited Justin Jefferson for a majority of the season because Sam Darnold is just not an exceptional talent. Now, maybe JJ McCarthy is, and Justin Jefferson is then deserving, but it's Jamar Chase 1, and then whoever the hell you want to put at 2, and Puka Nacua is as good as anyone to put him there at 2. Question for you about Puka Nacua: yards per route run, number what?
Was he number 1?
It was number 1. 3.59 yards per route run. That number should not exist for the amount of targets and receptions that this man had. Absurd, absolutely insane. We mentioned earlier in the show, AJ Brown 3.22 is number 2. No one else above 3, which because no one should really be above 3 at that high rate. Puka Nacua, exceptional, targeted all the time, always open apparently, and you just see it on the field. He's explosive. He's a great player.
Yeah, he's a monster, man. Like I don't know what else to say. Like the discussion this offseason where it was like Puka Nacua, Cooper Cup, like it just seems so crystal clear. Yeah, and by the way, with Cooper Cup on the roster, Puka Nacua was 4th in first read targets, 34%. He was behind Drake London, AJ Brown, Malik Neighbors. It shows you the company. If the whole thing with him is if he had round 1 draft capital, it would be a different discussion. But I think we can finally move past that. We're 2 years past it. No one should have question marks or anything about it. He is that player. So if you have him, congrats getting the discount. He's special.
I'm breaking out the analog just to do some quick math here. Whoops. No. Oh, that's what happens. That's what happens when you try to do quick math. Hang on. Here we go. On pace for 163 targets. He only played in 11 games this year. On pace for 163 targets. Still got over 100 targets. Still 79 receptions. Almost 1,000 yards in 11 games. So absolute stud. Next season, expect him to be healthy. I expect Stafford back for another year, maybe 2, if the old man can stay healthy himself. And that just means Puka to the moon. Can you make him your 2 in Dynasty? Sure.
I think you can. Like he's just one of those tier 1 guys. I don't care how you want to do it. You want to put him at 1, you want to put him at 6. I'm really not going to fight anybody because it's such good players in that range. Like he was top 6, the expected fantasy points per game. Everything was there. The expected fantasy points per route run is freaking absurd. It's like 0.68. It's like double the rest of these guys. So
yeah,
he's making magic happen. Yeah, that Rams offense is going to be. I guess we'll talk about Kyren Williams for a second. Move on. What's your kind of expectation with Kyren Williams? Do you think he holds on the job again, or do you think they are going to bring in someone professional?
No,
it's clearly not Blake Corum.
They're going to run him till the wheels fall off. They haven't fallen off yet for Kyren Williams. His best availability is available all the time. This is damn near. I mean, certainly not as explosive, certainly not as fast, but this is damn near as close to Todd Gurley in this offense, in this Sean McVay offense, as we've seen since Todd Gurley, and he's just getting all the run, all the volume. He is a literal security blanket for this team, and there are many games where the Rams run the crap out of the ball. In fact, I think they're one of the highest run rate teams in the league. I was looking at that earlier. I can't remember what number they are, but I think they were like 2nd in run rate. So yeah, Kyren Williams is awesome. Yeah, you can buy him.
Yeah, just a solid 22.25 opportunity this game. That's all you need to know about Kyren.
Insane.
It's his job. Now, people will probably have concerns about him. So if you want to buy a dip on Kyren, you probably can. It's obviously there will be a point in time where he'll be outside the top 12 dynasty wide receivers. That's you. If you want to buy him, you know it's good. Just know it's probably a short window with him. But whatever, it's running back. You're not going to get 5 years out of most of these guys anyway. So it's like just take the producers, right? So yeah, he's still.
To answer your earlier question about Seattle, we'll do this quickly. Number 1, Geno probably stays. He should stay. Number 2, they need to address the offensive line. It's been abysmal, even though they addressed it this offseason with getting 2 guards. None of that worked out. Number 3, Tyler Lockett probably moves on. Maybe they bring him back. But DK Metcalf, guess where he was in explosive play percentage in the league? Minimum 50 touches.
That's actually, I feel like it's pretty high. Like the explosive plays. I'll say he was. You wanted the percentage or where he finished?
Either or both.
All right, percentage. Let's say that's gonna be. I have no idea with wide receivers. 25%. Sure.
Good guess, and that would make him number.
Oh, maybe. Yeah.
Number 2, 30.3% explosive play rate. That's 30% of the time when he touches the ball, he breaks off an explosive play. Get this man the ball more. If that was the concern that Mike McDonald had and the disagreement that he had with Ryan Grubb, then I have no qualms about letting Ryan Grubb go. It was the JSN show. JSN, very good wide receiver, proved himself. He's totally progressed. He looked great in this iteration, this offense. JSN should not be the 1A consistently over DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf is an animal. Get that man the ball more.
Yeah, like you just look at their yards per target and the yards per catch. Like it's like he's over a full yards per down the field yards per target. His yards per catch is multiple yards above. I think it's like 4 above JSN, and it just makes sense from the two of them. Yeah, Metcalf with the really disappointing wide receiver 32 on the season. There is a dip on him if you want to buy it. I think you could do worse than buying the dip. He's a lot cheaper than the AJ Brown. Obviously, he's not going to give you, wide receiver 6 numbers or whatever it is, but just like similar. He's going into age 28 season. I'm not sure when his contract ends up. That's a whole other thing we can get into another point. But that is coming up as well soon, too. So we will see what happens. A lot of changes going on in Seattle. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm excited to see it. Let us go on. Oh, so we went too long. Jeremy's out. He said, enough of this. We're going to kick rocks out. Let's go to the Miami and New York game really quick. We're going to run through this really fast, folks. I will get back to Jeremy when he comes on. And I can't even do this. It's not working. So, hey, he's back.
What do
I figured.
No.
I figured you didn't want to talk about Miami and New York. You're like, I'm done.
That I'm out. Get me out of here.
You're like, I guess what? Quickly, Miami. Do you think Tyreek Hill stays, or do you think Tyreek Hill goes?
I think he stays. Where the hell is he going to go? Right? Who cares? Who wants that? And we saw the decline in his production. I don't blame all of that on him. I still think he's got a fair amount of that. We saw multiple times he had like 12 to 15 targets in a game, which is old Tyreek. I think he can sustain that. The problem is Devon Achane is so damn good and explosive. You want to get him the ball as many times as possible. Mike McDaniel's proven that, and it works when you have a competent quarterback who can do that on a consistent basis, like Tua Tagovailoa. So it's all about health with this team. And Tyreek Hill, was he healthy? I don't know. He had a weird like forearm thing, didn't he? Or shoulder thing last year. And so look, I think he stays. I think he's still, I think he's probably a value next year. But yeah, is he the top end wide receiver we're hoping for? No.
You'll probably get him around like 4, probably in that range of drafts. And I think you could do worse than Ben on a bounce around. I think the Devon Achane stuff is kind of weird because he went from the most efficient running back league to the least efficient running back in the league. Let's meet somewhere in the middle next year because they still gave him almost 300 opportunities. So, I mean, the offense could needs to figure out they got to work on the line, but the pieces are there. I will say Jalen Waddle's not a guy I really want to invest in. I just think at his cost, I just feel like he's going to be overvalued for the way I'll phrase it. So
fair.
That's all I'll do that. Where do you have him ranked? Really quickly.
That's a good question. I mean, look, the ranking for me is long term. I don't know what it's going to look like next season, especially assuming Tyreek Hill stays. Jalen Waddle's my wide receiver 17. I have him above Rashee Rice, Roma Dunze, George Pickens, Devonta Smith. It's high, but at some point Tyreek Hill retires or leaves the team. If he leaves next, in the offseason, if he retires, I mean, Jalen Waddle's going to have a great year. So when that happens, Jalen Waddle is the man. But until it does, I don't know.
Yeah, it just feels like, particularly this year, his role decreased even more. So that's kind of what I want to see, like what's going on there. Like get your explosive playmaker the ball. That's all I'll ask. Like if you guys do that with Tua, it should be good.
Agree.
For the Jets, there is going to be serious chaos and uncertainty. Talk about a rudderless ship. Adams and Rodgers probably not going to come back. If they come back, who knows? They're likely to pair together. Garrett Wilson, there's trade talk about him. Breece Hall had a really bad year. Where do you want to go with this Jets team that we talk about? Because it's so many different ways you can talk about it.
I don't want to go anywhere. I feel, look, firing Robert Saleh was the worst decision that this team made. Would they have probably had to fire him this offseason? Maybe. But the issue has been and always was Aaron Rodgers. And then you fire your head coach and GM in the middle of the season, which, look, I mean, I don't think those guys are taking the Jets to the Super Bowl or anything. But at the same time, I mean, Saleh, the splits with Robert Saleh as head coach on the defensive side of the ball for the New York Jets and without him are absolutely insane. He's been so good as a defensive coach that I just assumed that he went to the Detroit Lions because of their crazy turnaround as soon as Saleh was fired. And it, didn't even dawn on me it was another NFC North team in the Packers. So, he's there. He's in head coaching discussions as well. Other spots in the league, maybe he ends up in the Raiders, maybe he ends up going back to San Francisco as the D coordinator. But yeah, the Jets, Aaron Rodgers is gone. I think Devonta Adams stays. The problem is who's it going to be? Kirk Cousins? Are we going to throw this ball down the road, kick this can down the road again? it's just a mess in New York, and it's not going to get better anytime soon.
Yeah, it's just chaos. I will say Devonta Adams and Aaron Rodgers are like their neurolinks and brains are like hyper connected. They're on that telepathic stuff. Like since he came over there, oh my goodness, his targets. He's like on pace for like 170 targets or something with the Rodgers. So yeah, hey, come back. I'll vote for it again. I just want to see those two. Sorry, Jets fan. I'm a Grady fan, football manager. What can I say? Yeah, enough talking about the Jets. It's just gonna be chaos over there. Speaking of another dysfunctional organization, Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray. Kyler, talk about a Jekyll and Hyde performance. Kyler Murray is the most Jekyll and Hyde quarterback in the NFL. What does he do make 18 once they're just magically out of it? Oh, just 27 points. No big deal. Ball's out, 4 touchdowns. This is the Kyler Murray stuff. Where do you have Kyler Murray moving forward? And do you think him and Marvin Harrison Jr. can take a step forward and form a bond? Because Kyler only had 21 passing touchdowns, and that's really the big difference between him and some of the other quarterbacks. If he kicks it up by 10, that's how you become that. So do you think that's possible, Kyler? They get going with Harrison, or do you have concerns? Because the more people I talk to, people are seemingly worried about Kyler Murray because he just did not play that well this year.
Yeah, I don't think he's a very good NFL quarterback, and I think he probably should be replaced. The problem is he's good enough not to be replaced, and this is the Kyler Murray problem. He's my QB 17. I'm struggling between him and Tua. Who do I rank higher? Because when Tua has been healthy and on the field, he's been balling out. Multiple 3 and 4 touchdown games for Tua this season. So, look, it's very difficult with Kyler Murray because we know he has that rushing floor, which helps prop him up. But at the same time, I want nothing to do with him in Dynasty. I bought him on a Dynasty team because I lost Dak Prescott and I had a legitimate chance at the championship. I finished 3rd because I started Kyler Murray, but at the same point, I really want to sell the crap out of him this offseason. I'll pretty much take whatever I can get, tear down to one of these lesser quarterbacks and see what I can get from Kyler Murray. But yeah, it's a mess. Can he connect with Marvin Harrison? Yes. Marvin Harrison has actually been quietly pretty good. And I mentioned earlier in the show, wide receiver 5, the 5th best pass catcher for end zone targets with 17 on the season. They're looking to him. It just hasn't connected. Trey McBride has been good, but it didn't connect with him either. I think Kyler and this offense can figure out how to connect with these guys on probably longer touchdown passes. But I don't think it helps Kyler's production.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. It's weird because if you're ranking him at QB 17, I'll buy him at QB 17. But yeah, is the upside there? Because he's been QB3, he's been top 5 quarterback multiple times. Like I don't know if that's possible for him anymore or not. Like we'll see. It just seems like it's unlikely. And Jamie has a good question about him versus Drake May, because Drake May is multiple years younger, doesn't have the severe injuries like Kyler Murray has had. I know you're probably going to take a massive plus to get off of May for him.
Yeah.
What would it take for you to move off of Murray for Drake May? Because they're like most dynasty rankings have them basically clumped together.
Probably first. And I don't think you're going to get it. So
I don't think so either.
Yeah. I'm probably going to need a first because the second is not enough. Like why do I want Kyler Murray when everything with May in terms of his ability is pointing up in terms of trajectory? Now they're like, oh, we have this piece, let's build around him. And do I trust the Patriots to necessarily do that? No. But do they have all of the potential and opportunity to do that starting this offseason? Yes. And I expect them to do their best. And is that better than having mediocre Kyler Murray? Yeah, it is. So I'm going to need that first and Kyler because I need the opportunity to draft another quarterback is what I really need.
Yeah, I think you're just a lot lower than the dynasty consensus on Kyler Murray.
That's correct.
I think that's what it is. Because like Jamie has, I think Murray's top 10-ish, give or take. And yeah, like he's still scoring 15 fantasy points a game, which is why he was top 10. He's in that range. It's okay. It's not great. You still need the guys to kind of catch him in year 2, because if Drake May doesn't ascend, then you're kind of in the similar situation, right? So it's how much risk you want to take on, and if you think Murray doesn't have a ceiling, then yeah, you can transition. I think it's going to take a lot closer than a 1. I think you could probably a flex level like solid at skill position player could probably bridge the gap for a lot of teams. Depends like where they're at, if they're trying to contend or situations like that. I don't think you need to give a first, but yeah, like certain managers are going to be like, nah, man, you got to pay because the thing about Kyler is he frustrates me, and
It's so frustrating.
That's the thing. So like people, they get frustrated. And I've seen some links where people are just like, they sold Kyler for peanuts. And I'm like, why did you do that deal? Like, I just can't take it with Kyler anymore. So we just get so frustrated with certain players. Like, that just is what it is. So, yeah, it's like I said, with these multiple quarterbacks, I'll probably buy Kyler. And will I regret it? Probably. But you know what? I'm going to do it anyways. We'll see how it goes. It's just one of those things.
Question, though. Who would you prefer right now, Kyler Murray or Bryce Young?
Kyler. I like Bryce. I think he's good, but like I need to see more as far as the production wise, just because I'm a little bit worried about it. I know Kyler has a much higher floor, and so like if I'm differentiating between those two, and I wonder what Bryce's ceiling is. So we get into that range quarterback, that's where I have like, all right, I think that's going a little bit too far. But yeah, like if you're not worried about contending this year and you want to get the younger player, I understand it. Like quarterback values dramatically changed. Look at CJ Stroud, right? Like QB1. Now he's QB 18 for people. Like it just, yeah. And then there's the Baker discussion or the Goff discussion or the Baker. I mean, these guys are locked in. Unlike Darnold, who doesn't have a contract, right? But it's going to be a lot closer than it was going into the year. These guys were dramatically far apart, right? So it shows you where they're at. So, and then there's also the freaking T-Law situation. Like these quarterbacks outside the elites, you kind of have to pick and choose which guy you want to take that.
Yes,
because you can make the case for about 10 of them. Like you can legit make the case for 10 of them. Like there's going to be the Anthony Richardson guys. There's going to be all these players. It's like, all right, man. So good luck. It's really hard to rank quarterbacks. I would just say that it gets real difficult at that point.
Are the Jags doomed? No. Do they have a lot of holes to fill? Yes.
Yes.
Does it need to start on the offensive side of the ball? Yes. Just leave the defense alone. Let it be. Let the young guys play. You know, they're bad. That's fine. Let them be bad again. Build the offense around and see if you need to draft a quarterback next year in the 2026 draft, because you have to find out if Trevor can legitimately be the guy if you put actual weapons around him. Healthy Evan Ingram, wide receiver from free agency in the draft, build the offensive line, just go all in on offense and find out. Will they do that? Probably not.
No, probably not. But yeah, like with a lot of these teams, it flows from the top down. So with Balky in charge, you have no idea how this is going to go. Like that's my bigger concern. I mean, they could. Oh, sorry. But the other one. Yeah, you could tell about they could steal Genty. Like, I mean, I don't know why you guys would do that. It seems kind of silly to invest in that, like Genty, when you have all these other issues. Like, but they do need a rookie running back. So I understand it if they do that. Yeah, Mac Jones is something. You guys are connected with the Mac Jones stuff as being the young promising rookie.
Whatever.
All right, enough talking about bad quarterbacks. We're just going to move on from that.
Let's talk about Brock Purdy.
Oh, yeah, exciting. Purdy, yeah, another guy. I'm fairly safe to say he's going to get a locked-in contract. He's definitely gotten better. Situation's gotten worse. So we'll see what happens with him next year. I don't know how I feel about Brock Purdy. He kind of falls into this QB 15 range with T-Law and those guys and Goff, and how are you going to view that? I think everything around him is still there, though, where you could talk yourself into the situation being really, really good. That's what you can talk. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's really easy with all the skill players they still have. They still have the wide receivers. They still have CMC, who said he's going to be 100%, whatever that means. You got George Kittle. You got the Kyle Shanahan, one of the best offensive players in the NFL. The offensive line is an underlying concern for them. It is kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
So that's my bigger concern in San Francisco.
For sure.
The force, I don't know about the ceiling. It's just it's not going to get. I don't think it gets better like anytime soon as well.
No, because Debo is effectively off this team. Brandon Ayuk, who knows where his head's at? Is he a George Pickens case? Like I don't really know what's going on there. And then of course George Kittle is a year older. I mean, he was phenomenal this year. He's going to have another phenomenal year next year. Like there's no real concern about that. The problem is outside of George Kittle, you got a shaky CMC in terms of his health. You got Juwan Jennings, who's fine, but not a 1, but operating as a 1. Pearsall looks like a capable guy in limited work. but it's all a concern in San Francisco. So yeah, Brock Purdy, I knocked him down the ranks. I think he's QB 19 for me. He's capable of throwing 4 touchdowns a game, like a lot of these guys, but you have to do that on a consistent level if you're not running all over the field. He's not running all over the field, and this offense is not going to be great.
So do you have guys like Penix and McCarthy and stuff over him in rankings?
No, I don't actually. Hang on.
Because
Let me look.
Keep Trey Heisman is QB 14 right now.
Yeah,
and it's I know you have Mayfield above him for sure.
Right.
Lawrence.
Yeah. Baker. So I have Stroud. I have Lawrence because I still believe in Lawrence, and I do believe that Ben Johnson probably goes there. And if that's the case, I think they're going to figure it out.
He's the guy you invest in, yeah.
Sam Darnold. I think Sam Darnold stays in Minnesota. I really do. I know it was really bad last week. Is it the right move for the team? Like from a contract perspective with a rookie QB contract? No. Is Sam Darnold probably better than JJ McCarthy next season? If the two compete, I would say probably yes. I think he stays, and that's why he's my QB 15 right now. And then Bryce Young.
Yep, makes sense. Like you talk about all those guys.
I need you to do another fingers.
Question for you, and then we'll cover the last game.
Yep.
Since we're on 2 hours, we'll wrap this thing up.
Yeah, we need to wrap it up.
Long today. Would you trade 112 and 206,
No.
26 second for Jalen Waddle?
No.
What do you have his value at? What are you willing to give up? Would you give up the 112 by itself?
Maybe. Probably. I probably would. The 206 second, I'm not comfortable with. I think I read that as 205 second. It's not terrible value for Waddle, but I think it would have to be a third for me. If I'm giving up a first, I get it's the 112. But why wouldn't you just draft, a top 4 wide receiver in this class, or a really good running back outside of Jalen Waddle? I get it, but there's so much in flux. The health of Tua, the situation with Tyreek Hill, the usage of Jonnu Smith. It doesn't make any sense what this team is doing. Mike McCarthy, unfortunately, should have been fired. He wasn't. This team imploded. It should be fine, but I'm not sold. Even though he's my wide receiver 16, I'm not sold that he's going to be able to do it next year, and I want immediate production if I'm sending away that capital.
So there's about 16 wide receivers you'd spend a first on, like guys that are worth the first team, or does it go a little bit farther than that?
Oh, he's definitely worth a first. But I don't think that he's going to produce immediately. So that's my concern.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think if you tell me Emeka Ejikwa is going to be there at the 112, then yeah, I'd be willing to take that guy. I think he's going to go a little bit before that, and it's going to leave you to a really uncomfortable position unless you want a running back. If you want a running back, then yeah, I think Jamie, I would just wait. You don't need to pay this price for Waddle. His market's not going to skyrocket. I don't think Hill's going to. Agree. Right? The only way that happens is if they trade Hill before the draft.
Or
if that happens, then you're kind of just like, well, it is what it is. And Gabriel, to answer your question, I don't think Hunter gets the 5. I think he's gone before 5. He's the first skill position player goes. So yeah, somebody's taking him. Yeah, because not all 5 teams need quarterback, right? So it gets in this weird, and everybody's saying Cleveland might not just take quarterback. If that's the case, then Travis Hunter's there. So I think it's possible. I will say it's possible it happens because top 5 is still insanely high for any skill position player, like a guy that plays on the outside, right? But I don't expect him to be there. I'm just gonna say that. Yeah. But possible. We'll give you a little bit of hope. Say possible. I don't know. It's
we'll see.
All right, last game. Game, folks. We're on record here. Minnesota, Detroit. Yeah. Speaking of Sam Darnold, what the f, Sam Darnold?
Crazy.
You got obliterated. It looks like Jets Sam Darnold. 18 for 41.
Insane.
No interceptions, but 166 yards. That is brutal inefficiency. The Lions just dominated this game. They look like the team that I was expecting them in the Super Bowl. Yeah, sometimes that happens. So the Vikings will probably get another chance against the Lions because they're better than the bottom tier of So they're either going to play Philadelphia or they're more than likely going to play the Lions in the NFC Championship or the Small Workshop, right? So they'll get another shot. Will they do it? Oh man! But with Justin Jefferson, to your point, with Darnold, with JJ McCarthy, it's just the ceiling's a little bit lower in Jamar Chase, so it makes sense why he's lower. Jordan Addison. I guess we talk about Addison for a second. How do you feel about Addison? He had 100 targets this season. He was pretty efficient on those targets, had almost 900 yards. you kind of view him as those solid number twos, so like the Jalen Waddles, the Devonta Smiths, those type of guys in that role. I don't know if he's as good as those guys, but he plays a very similar role to those guys. So, do you think he's worth the 112? I'll say this because he's probably a lot lower in your rankings. Where do you have him, and what would you give up for him?
He's my wide receiver 28. I have him above Jerry Jeudy. I have him above JMO. I'm comfortable with him there. I think the youth, what he's put on tape and the production, and of course playing alongside Justin Jefferson helps him a ton. I was actually pleasantly surprised with the fact that they tended to prefer Addison and targeting him over TJ Hawkinson. I know TJ Hawkinson may have not been 100% healthy given what he was dealing with. So we'll see what happens next season when all of this is, when everyone's 100%. But I think Addison has earned that role. And I do like him there. So is he worth the first? No. Would I give up a high second for him? Yeah.
Yeah. Like Hawkinson's, if you pace out his season, he's on pace for about a little over 100 targets if he played all 17 games. Mm-hmm. Well below what he did last year. So we'll see. Hawkinson might end up becoming a very good dynasty buy. We'll see how it goes. I think that it's a high floor job. So like if he's back to being himself, should be fine. He's older. Here's what it is. To the Lions, have you moved Jahmyr Gibbs to RB1 dynasty overall? That discussion is happening a lot in dynasty streets. People are talking about taking more Bijan. I understand it. I think the question really comes down to Monty. And then the rest of it, I guess Goff and the other personnel. What are you doing with Laporta? How do you feel about those guys?
Yeah. RB1, no way. He's my RB2.
Yeah.
I still have Brees 3. I may regret that and change that. Saquon 4, Achane 5, and Kyron 6. But yeah, could you make the case for Gibbs 1? Sure, why not? He's going to continue to do it. And if they do not replace David Montgomery going forward, this is obviously a couple of years down the line because Montgomery is most likely going to be there next year too. It could be really good for Jahmyr Gibbs and his run out before he gets the absolute bag from Detroit or someone else. It better be Detroit. They need to keep his ass around.
Yes, especially.
But yeah, so fantastic. But these other pieces, Sam Laporta, dude. Sam Laporta is actually. I don't know where he finished, but after week 17, he was the tight end 7 on the season, which makes no sense because he had a horrific first half of the season, came back and scored a bunch of touchdowns, was utilized well, and actually kept up in this offense with Jameson Williams for most of the games over the back half of the season, which was, impressive given where he started. So, look, Sam Laporta, I think, is probably a buy. He's my tight end 3 in Dynasty. He probably shouldn't be there, but he's young. He's still impressive, and this offense is throwing the football. So thank you very much, Jared Goff. Jameson Williams is, I think, a buy. I feel like I have him too low. That guy is just a big play waiting to happen. He's Devon Achane, just in wide receiver form. So he gets the ball.
For real.
And then you buy every single piece of this offense. David Montgomery is my RB19. Go ahead and buy David Montgomery because he's going to continue to score touchdowns next season as well. So.
Yeah, I think with Jameson Williams, I would prefer him, which sounds crazy, to Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, those guys, because he gets this offense, which is so just fantastic. You get the boom weeks, and both him and Laporta. Post-bye week, no one saw less than 5 targets in any of those games. That was the minimum either one of those guys saw. They're ancillary pieces, but they're really good pieces. So it's I hated his tight end 1 spot with Sam Darnold.
Thank you.
Sam Laporta, but this is tier 1. He's fine. He should be in that discussion. It's a very good NFL. It's just such a good setup. You got Goff who's coming. The offensive line, everything's there. Goff's going to produce. He's been QB6 and QB7 the last 2 seasons. Just lock him in for another top 10 season. It's just what it is, and they're just going to keep scoring. So, yeah, the Lions are just incredible. Do you think they can win the Super Bowl? Is the last question I'll ask you. Do you think they can do it, even though the defense is in shambles?
Of course they can win the Super Bowl, and they probably should. Will they? I don't know. I think it's up to the Bills or the Chiefs to stop them. I don't think Philly stop them.
I'm with you. It's going to be a lot of fun watching this team at home, and it's the playoffs run through Detroit, and it's going to be high. It's going to be a blast there. So, yeah, I'm excited to see that. Okay, we're pushing an insanely. This is the longest show we'll probably ever do that we are just doing right now. I am keeping Jeremy up way too late, so we are going to end this because Jamie, I don't know what the Kyron comments about. Maybe it's from earlier, but
RB6.
Yeah, he's volume, my friend. It's volume. If he gets the role again, which I expect him to get the role again, he's going to have 280, 300 touches again. Like, it just is what it is. Hey, I'm glad you love him. At a certain point in these shows, we reach out. I'm just like, boy, we're still going, huh? Okay.
Hang on.
I'm glad you like it.
Before we sign off, I just need to check Kyron Williams here and how many games he's missed in his career. I'm guessing it's 0. And I think that's the issue. So he didn't play week 18. Okay. Oh, he missed some in the middle of last season with an injury. But Kyron Williams has been, when he's available and he's given the workload, he's proven he can hold up to it. Can he hold up over multiple seasons? Yeah, I think he can. The touch volume was absolutely crazy, completely healthy this year. And that's really what it is. So, and they give him the rock a ton, especially in the red zone. How many total touchdowns did he have is the question this season?
He had 16 total touchdowns. Boy, oh boy.
And
just
only
basically like 1,500 yards.
Yeah, damn near 1,500 yards this year. And
that's absurd.
Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley.
Yeah. Now, can he hold up because he's smaller back? We'll see. That's kind of the issue, right? But he's going to keep doing it. So, yeah. Hey, man, we appreciate you. All joking aside, these shows are a lot of fun. We can do this for all day, but we have to have lives and families and stuff outside of fans. Well,
yeah,
so
that's true.
we're gonna have to wrap this up. So Jeremy's out in space. I'm getting blood drawn at the clinic. It's the life we live. So
last show of the season on Saturday. We're going to do a fantasy awards show. We still have a couple votes open over on Twitter, so go ahead over there. Fantasy Football Universe. Vote for the last few ones that are open. SC will be on that show. I think Aaron will be on that show as well. We'll give out our awards, and we'll be here on Saturday to close it all out before, as I'm knocking over microphones, good Lord, before we say sayonara for the off season and give ourselves a much needed, at least couple of week break.
Yeah, we're gonna
enjoy the playoffs.
SC and Aaron do that.
Yeah,
the SC and Aaron can run that for a few weeks, and we'll can jump back in because I don't have the motivation to do the rookie chat just yet. I'll get there in a couple weeks, but So join us on Saturday. But
shameless plug, daily content on Adjust the Ranks. Come check that out. I'm also going to clip this, and we'll put content for our channel here as well on all the platforms, so you can check that out. But yeah, join us. We'll be around all off season, all over the place. You can count on us for all the info, especially in these dynasty treats. Dynasty startup season is coming.
Dynasty's my jam, baby. Why don't you plug when you're going to do your dynasty mock?
Oh yeah, dynasty mocks going on weekly, mostly Saturdays, I'd say through February. I may end up going to a Sunday here or there, but I'm going to put them again. It's Adjust the Ranks. We're on Twitter. We're on YouTube. We're on the other one, TikTok. But on Twitter, you'll get all the updates and the links to join in the mocks. So feel free to like and subscribe over there if you want to get in on them. And these are mocks that I do a show on. I'm going to have Jesse join me. I'm going to have other guys join me routinely throughout the off season. We're going to discuss them. I'll post the shows. I'll post shorts as well. So you get all that daily stuff, and you can get your mock evaluated basically as well. And just join us and a bunch of other knowledgeable minds in those mocks all off season long.
Heck yeah. Much like the Tombstone movie, I'm your Huckleberry, Jeremy. That's how it's going to go, baby. This is for the old people that know this. We're getting too old because I'm pushing like
Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer,
yes,
baby.
sir, baby. Looking like death. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Enough for that. Anyways, follow Establish the Ranks. It's great content. Jeremy puts what he puts into that. You guys are gonna like it. So we'll see y'all Saturday. So enough talking. I'm out. I'm gonna go get some lunch. So we'll see y'all on Saturday. Have a good day, folks. Listen up.